Good morning, everyone. So my name is Santosh Kumar. I'll be your academic head for this GS Foundation course. Now, today your polity classes are supposed to start. Before going into polity, I want to just go through the entire program once, take care of all the doubts you may have, all the things that we have to study, all the things that will be included in this program, how we are ensuring that your program, being the most exhaustive, still gets over by February 28. हम हर साल February 28 commit करते हैं, worst case में March 10 तक जाता है. इस साल भी we are like trying कि we will be finishing it on March 28, but in worst case it will go till March 10. तो how do we plan to do that? उन सारी चीजों के बारे में हम बातें करेंगे over the next half an hour. And there are online students also, Akshat, Ayush, मोपी, लोलिन, प्रवीण, सौजन्या, सुबोध, सुधांशु, स्वप्निल. आप लोग ना एक बार चैट में मुझे बता दीजिए if I'm properly audible and visible. Just in chat, type yes or no once so that I'll be aware of. Yes, okay. Properly audible. Okay. So let me start with the structure of the program. What are all the things that we do in this program? देखो, GS Foundation program at LevelUp IAS is different from others because we say that if you are part of our GS Foundation program, your entire preparation, except your optional, like we do not have all the optionals, so we will not be able to commit the sare optionals for you, except your optionals is our responsibility. That is your GS classes for GS 1, 2, 3, 4, your GS prelims ka GS classes, your CSAT classes, your essay. These are the things that you'll need. Everything is part of the program. We are not going to ask you, beta, for essay join this, for CSAT join this. No. Even the current affairs program, I'll also be your current affairs teacher. Every Saturday, Sunday, sometimes Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'll be meeting you, I'll be taking your current affairs classes. So even the current affairs program is part of this. Not only this, all the tests that you want to write, you'll have more tests than you can write. You'll have more subjective test or objective test than you can write every Sunday. आज से लेकर August 2026 तक you'll have test. There will not be a single Sunday except the day of preliminary examination. जिस दिन UPSC लेगा आपका test. You'll have test every day. So what we'll do is every week we'll have 6 GS classes. Initially, we are starting with only one subject. We are doing polity. But later, like a month later, when polity is completed, we'll be having 2 subjects. Let's say economy and modern India. We'll have 3 classes for economy and 3 classes for modern India. This is when? This is Monday to Saturday. Plus on Saturday, Sunday. This is on Saturday and Sunday. This will be from 8 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. On Saturday, Sunday, from 11 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. for another 2.5 hours, you'll have current affairs classes. Do you understand this? 6 classes of GS where you'll be doing polity. Saturday, Sunday, you will have current affairs classes. फिर every Sunday, between 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. 11 to 1:30 current affairs class खत्म हो जाएगी, but every Sunday between 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. you'll have 2 tests. एक मेंस का, एक प्रीलिम्स का. Every week, whatever you're studying, including current affairs of previous Saturday, Sunday, not of this Saturday, Sunday, else you would not have revised it, will be tested in the form of 50 question objective test, 6-7 question subjective test. Okay, idea is you should, on Saturday, you should feel like, oh, I have an exam tomorrow. I have to study. You have all just graduated. So you know, when do we study the most? When we have a एग्जाम नेक्स्ट डे, व्हेन वी डोंट हैव एग्जाम नेक्स्ट डे वी आर लाइक अरे पढ़ लेंगे चलो, बहुत 2 क्लास हो गया, आज एंजॉय करना है। नहीं, एंजॉय करने का भी टाइम है। व्हाट वी टेल एवरीवन इज, अभी मैं शेड्यूल के बारे में बात करूंगा, तो एवरी डे यू हैव सम एक्सरसाइज, सम ब्रेक एंड ऑल, बट वी टेल ऑल आवर स्टूडेंट्स, बेटा 5 बजे संडे शाम को से रात में 11 बजे तक, 10 बजे तक, जब भी आप सोते हो, पढ़ाई तो नहीं करनी है, बिकॉज वी विल कीप यू बिजी फॉर द होल वीक। यू विल फील हरास्ड, यार क्या चल रहा है, इतनी क्लासेस क्यों हो रही है, इतनी पढ़ाई क्यों हो रही है। तो एवरी संडे आफ्टर यू आर डन विद योर टेस्ट एट 5 PM, यू शुड बी लाइक, कल सुबह 8 बजे जो होगा वो होगा। आई हैव टू डू व्हाट, आई हैव टू रेस्ट अ बिट। रेस्ट अ बिट नहीं, रेस्ट तो रोज ही करना है, बट जैसे सपोज सम ऑफ यू लाइक रनिंग, तो आज मैं पार्क में जाऊंगा और रोज मैं 40-45 मिनट्स एक्सरसाइज कर रहा हूं, आज तो मैं जब तक मन करेगा करूंगा। सम ऑफ यू लाइक, नहीं मुझे फुटबॉल खेलना है, फाइंड अ ग्रुप जो फुटबॉल खेल रहा है, 2-3 घंटे 4 घंटे खेलो। सम ऑफ यू लाइक शॉपिंग, बहुत सारे पैसे बर्बाद करने हैं, तो गो आउट, शॉप, एंजॉय, डू वॉट एवर यू वॉन्ट विच मेक्स यू हैप्पी, एंड यू विल फील कि जब रात में सोने, उस दिन एग्जाम भी दिया है, सब दिया है, यू एंजॉयड योर लाइफ, नेक्स्ट 6 days के लिए यू विल अगेन बी रेडी। Okay, this is the rough plan. You'll have 6 GS classes, which will be initially polity, but later we'll have 2 subjects at a time. हम 3 दिन, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we'll have one subject. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we'll have another subject, and we'll keep having current affairs classes on Saturday, Sunday. ये 8 classes तो है, but note something. देखो, even for you people, we want that the batch should get over in May. जो बैच जून में शुरू हुआ, उनके लिए भी we want batch should get over in May. आपके लिए भी batch should get over in May. तो you'll have some extra classes also. Not initially get into the groove, but maybe 2 months later, what we'll have, मंडे ट्यूसडे को हम एक्स्ट्रा क्लासेस रखना शुरू करेंगे। कब से? बस 8 to 10:30 योर फर्स्ट जीएस क्लास, 11 to 1:30 योर सेकेंड जीएस क्लास। ओके, वी वांट दैट योर प्रिपरेशन शुड बी कंप्लीटेड बाय February 28। वी वांट दैट यू शुड हैव 2-3 months, किसके लिए? वापस से बार बार पढ़ने के लिए। मार्च अप्रैल में सिर्फ करंट अफेयर्स की क्लासेस होनी चाहिए। दैट आई कैन नॉट फिनिश बाय February, क्योंकि मार्च अप्रैल का न्यूज तो फरवरी में आ नहीं जाएगा। If your exam is on 24th May, I think 23rd या 24th May को है सर, 24th May को है, तो I'll ensure that till April 24 जो भी न्यूज़पेपर में important चीजें आ रही हैं should be covered. तो other than current affairs classes, your classes should get over. You should get lots of time for revision. Generally, what happens when batches start in July and August, institutions take it till April May. फिर उन बच्चों का ना कभी सिलेक्शन नहीं होता है उस साल। We don't want that. तो rather than taking multiple classes in April, May, 2-3 classes in April, May, no. We have already planned it in such a manner that our extra classes ek do karke, when would they start? They would start somewhere from September only, so that we don't have a lot of pressure at the end. ये समझ में आया? फिर April, May में we'll only have current affairs classes. After May also, after your preliminary examination also, mains के लिए current affairs classes would continue till your exams. तो जितनी भी क्लास चाहिए प्री के लिए, मेंस के लिए, एवरीथिंग इज पार्ट ऑफ द जीएस फाउंडेशन कोर्स। हमें क्लैरिटी है क्लासेस के बारे में? क्लासेस के लिए आप कैसे आओगे? क्लासेस के लिए मंडे टू सैटरडे एवरी डे टिल मार्च 28, मंडे टू संडे एवरी डे टिल मार्च 28, ओ सॉरी मार्च 28, February 28, मार्च अप्रैल में करंट अफेयर्स अपडेट्स फॉर प्रीलिम्स, एंड उसके बाद करंट अफेयर्स अपडेट्स फॉर मेंस। दीज विल बी योर क्लासेस। यहां पे ही हम सीसैट फिक्स करेंगे, यहां पे ही हम एसए फिक्स करेंगे, यहां पे ही सारे जो आपकी प्रिपरेशन की रिक्वायरमेंट है, वी विल इंक्लूड इट हियर, वी विल टेक केयर ऑफ इट हियर। डू वी हैव क्लैरिटी? ओके, नाउ लेट्स कम टू, ये तो हो गई क्लासेस। अब अगेन आई एम रिपीटिंग इट फॉर द लास्ट टाइम, एनीथिंग एंड एवरीथिंग दैट यू नीड फॉर योर प्रिपरेशन आर पार्ट ऑफ दिस क्लासेस। ये मत सोचना ऐसे है या नहीं, सीसैट है या नहीं, एवरीथिंग इज पार्ट ऑफ योर जीएस फाउंडेशन कोर्स। एंड वी हैव अ प्लान कि हम इस टाइम पे इनको एसए करवाना शुरू करेंगे। एसए वुड शुड बी डन व्हेन योर सम बेसिक जीएस इज कंप्लीटेड, है ना? नाउ हाउ डू विल वी असेस एंड इवैल्यूएट एंड रिवाइज? मैंने आपको वीकली टेस्ट के बारे में बताया। मंडे टू सैटरडे व्हाटएवर यू आर स्टडीइंग, you will have that will be evaluated on the weekly test. But पता है क्या होगा? In July, let's say एक वीक बाद या 2 वीक बाद हम आपके टेस्ट शुरू करते हैं. एक बार शुरू होंगे तो वो हर वीक चलेंगे. If you revise it only once, जैसे Monday to Saturday में whatever you studied, you revised it on Sunday test. You'll again forget it 2-3 months later. ऐसा नहीं है कि आपने आज रिवाइज कर लिया तो it will be there with you forever. तो we have planned our test in such a manner कि initially तो we have weekly tests. क्या होंगे? You'll have 4 weekly tests. Fine. But here you will have a monthly test. जिसका सिलेबस क्या रहेगा? Again forcing you to revise. आप प्रोग्राम को सही से फॉलो करो. It is our responsibility to make you revise things multiple times. Now, देखो आपने अगस्त में जो भी पढ़ा, अगस्त एंड में आपका एक मंथली टेस्ट हुआ और मंथली टेस्ट विल बी बिगर 100 क्वेश्चन को. अभी ऐसे 50-50 क्वेश्चंस के टेस्ट हो रहे हैं वीकेंड्स पे. वहां पे 100 क्वेश्चन का सब्जेक्टिव टेस्ट, मेंस पेपर भी बड़ा होगा. ऐसे ही विल सितंबर में वीकली टेस्ट एंड देन मंथली टेस्ट, फिर वीकली टेस्ट, देन मंथली टेस्ट. तो जो आपने पूरे अगस्त में पढ़ा उसका वीकली टेस्ट में रिवीजन किया, मंथली टेस्ट में रिवीजन किया. सितंबर में पढ़ा, वीकली टेस्ट में रिवीजन किया, मंथली टेस्ट में रिवीजन किया. अक्टूबर में पढ़ा, वीकली टेस्ट में रिवीजन किया, मंथली टेस्ट में रिवीजन किया. बट देन अगस्त वाला जो पढ़ा है वो तो 3 महीने पुराना हो गया ना, वो फिर भूलने लगोगे. We'll have a quarterly test 3 months later. Weekly, monthly, but at the end of 3 months, चलो पूरा रिवाइज करके आओ. We'll give you 1 or 2 day off. Again making you जो आपने पहली क्लास में पढ़ा after 100 days in the quarterly test, that will also be part of your syllabus, test syllabus. वो एग्जाम से पहले वाला पैनिक, एक बार पूरा सिलेबस देखना, इट विल इंश्योर कि आप जब फरवरी रीच कर रहे हो ना, यू डोंट फील लाइक यार मैंने जून में क्या पढ़ा था. मोस्ट ऑफ द स्टूडेंट्स फील दैट. मोस्ट ऑफ द स्टूडेंट्स डोंट क्लियर प्रिलिमिनरी एग्जामिनेशन, मेंस एग्जामिनेशन, गेट सिलेक्टेड इन द वेरी फर्स्ट अटेम्प्ट, बिकॉज मैं उन बच्चों की बात करूं जो बहुत मेहनती है, जिनका सिलेक्शन होना चाहिए. दे sometimes don't get selected because they have put in a lot of effort but they have not regularly revised. We have planned it in such a manner that we will make you revise. And not only this quarterly thing, you'll have weekly, monthly, quarterly thing again in 3 months, but the end of 6 months we'll have a half yearly test. तब तक आपका around 70% syllabus भी हो गया होगा and 70-80% syllabus would be done. It will be like a semi-final match for you. आप सिंसियरली फॉलो करो. आप एक एक ऑब्जेक्टिव टेस्ट, एक एक सब्जेक्टिव टेस्ट सिंसियरली फॉलो करो. सर रिवीजन कैसे करना है? जैसे एवरी डे इफ यू हैव टाइम, थिंक ऑफ मैं क्या पढूं, क्या है संडे के टेस्ट में. बिकॉज इन योर संडे टेस्ट, थ्रू योर संडे टेस्ट, वी विल इंश्योर आपका 4-5 बार तो रिवीजन होगा ही. I'll talk about how your daily schedule should be and everything. But did you understand ये evaluation वाला पूरा system, evaluation assessment? आपको क्लैरिटी मिली कि आप अगर ऑनेस्टली फॉलो करोगे, पूरी चीजें बार बार रिवाइज होंगी. प्रेशर भी आएगा, यार 6 मंथली टेस्ट आ गया, 6 महीने का पूरा एक बार में कैसे रिवाइज करूं. प्रेशर तब आएगा व्हेन यू हैव नॉट डन वीकली टेस्ट, मंथली टेस्ट, क्वार्टरली टेस्ट. इफ यू हैव ऑलरेडी डन वीकली टेस्ट, मंथली टेस्ट, क्वार्टरली टेस्ट, यू हैव ऑलरेडी रिवाइज्ड देम 3 टाइम्स. रिवाइजिंग इट अगेन विल नॉट बी अ प्रॉब्लम. ओके, मैं आपको एक स्टूडेंट के बारे में बताता हूँ. एक बच्चा है, उसका नाम है प्रदीप चंद्रा. वो लास्ट ईयर हमारे जीएस फाउंडेशन बैच में आया था जून में. इस बार प्रिलिमिनरी एग्जामिनेशन में स्कोरिंग 138 मार्क्स. इज राइटिंग मेंस दिस ईयर. तो मैंने बहुत सारे टॉपर्स के सेशंस कराए आपके बैच में भी. आई विल ब्रिंग अ लॉट ऑफ टॉपर्स. बट इस बार जब जून बैच शुरू हुआ ना, बेटा तू आ, यू टेक अ सेशन. एंड ही वाज लाइक आप लोगों की तरह घबराया हुआ, अभी तो प्रिपरेशन स्टार्ट करी है, पहली बार प्री दिया, आप सेशन के लिए बुला रहे हो. इसलिए बुलाया था क्योंकि नो आई डू नॉट हैव एनी अदर स्टूडेंट जो पहले इंटरव्यू, जो पहले सिलेक्टेड बच्चे भी है ना, जो पहले आईपीएस बच्चे थे, वो दोबारा एग्जाम दे रहे थे मेरे करंट अफेयर्स प्रोग्राम में, उनके भी 138 नहीं आ रहे थे. तो आई वांटेड हिम टू टेक अ सेशन एंड ही सेड एवरीथिंग दैट वी टेल यू कि वीकली रिवाइज करो, मंथली रिवाइज करो, वो सब. बट आखिर में उसने एक बात बोली. उसने बोला कि सर देयर वर 52 टेस्ट्स पूरे जून से मई में, अराउंड 52 टेस्ट वर देयर. आई अटेम्प्टेड 50 ऑफ देम. मैं 2 अटेम्प्ट नहीं कर पाया था. एक बार मेरी तबीयत खराब थी और एक बार आई हैड सम एग्जाम्स. प्लीज फॉलो इट। उसने बोला एग्जाम में, मुझे ऐसा लगा दी प्रिलिमिनरी एग्जामिनेशन वाज फिफ्थ समीक्षा, लाइक लास्ट में हम 4 समीक्षा टेस्ट लेते हैं विच आर ओपन फॉर एवरीवन, सब लोग आ जाओ। तो उसे लगा कि वही सेट कि इट वाज लाइक फिफ्थ समीक्षा की मैं अभी इंस्टीट्यूट में बैठ के अपना एग्जाम दे रहा हूं, वही नोट्स में से चीजें आ रही हैं, वैसा हो रहा है। तो इंपॉर्टेंट क्या है, आप हर एक टेस्ट के लिए पढ़िए, रिवाइज करिए, और रिवाइज नहीं भी हो पाया फिर भी मेक इट अ रूल, आई हैव टू अटेंड द टेस्ट। रिवाइज अच्छे से नहीं हो पाया, मार्क्स कम आ जाएंगे ना। बट द मोमेंट ऑन सैटरडे यू डिसाइड, अरे आई वोंट गिव संडेज टेस्ट, जो सैटरडे टू संडे 2 बजे तक जो पढ़ने का मोड होता है ना, वो खराब हो जाएगा। एग्जाम है संडे को 2 बजे, तो क्या होता है, यू विल गेट अप ऑन संडे मॉर्निंग, और जैसे तैसे you all just graduated, you all know what you do before exam, and the moment you have an option, कल नहीं परसों कर सकते हैं, हो गया, है ना। तो हमें क्या करना है, हमें इंश्योर करना है एक एक टेस्ट देना है, ऑब्जेक्टिव भी सब्जेक्टिव भी। क्लासेस का आपको पूरा समझ में आया, टेस्ट असेसमेंट पूरे समझ में आए। दिस विल गो ऑन टिल February. After February, for March, April, May, we'll only have objective tests. Make sense? Prelims की तैयारी में जाना चाहिए। We'll only have objective test. तो prelims test series is also part of your program. You don't have to join it separately. And after that means after May, mains test series, जहां पे सिर्फ सब्जेक्टिव टेस्ट होंगे, 20 क्वेश्चंस के फुल लेंथ इंक्लूडिंग एस्से टेस्ट, दोज आर आल्सो पार्ट ऑफ योर प्रोग्राम। तो जो भी आपको प्रिपरेशन में चाहिए, एवरीथिंग वुड हैज बीन इंक्लूडेड हियर, एवरीथिंग विल बी हियर। ये चीज समझ में आई। दूसरा, तो फर्स्ट वाज क्लासेस, सेकंड वाज हाउ वी विल असेस इवैल्यूएट आवरसेल्फ, थर्ड इज योर मेंटरशिप। देखो, एज अ मेंटर आई विल बी अवेलेबल टू यू, मैं हर वीक आपके पास एक सेशन लेने आऊंगा, ग्रुप सेशन। अभी फॉर नेक्स्ट 1 मंथ आई एम नॉट इंडिविजुअली अवेलेबल, बट 10th ऑफ अगस्त तक ना मेरा मेंस का सारा काम कंप्लीट हो जाएगा। जो बच्चे लास्ट ईयर वाले भी मेंस दे रहे हैं ना, आई एम अ बिट बिजी विद देम, बट you will, other than me, you will also have a mentor allocated, जो इंटरव्यूज दे चुके हैं, वैसे वाली सिचुएशन में है, एंड दे विल, आप उनको मैसेज कर सकते हो, आप उनसे गाइडेंस ले सकते हो। आपके कोर्स के कोऑर्डिनेटर अकरम सर है, अकरम सर को मैंने आज क्लास में बुला लिया था, आप उनका भी नंबर ले सकते हो। कोई भी इशू, कोई भी कंसर्न होगा, आप उनको भी मैसेज कर सकते हो। विल ऑल्सो सेंड यू अ मैसेज इन द ग्रुप टुडे। आपको अगर टेक्निकल इशू हो रहा है तो आप सपोर्ट को मैसेज करिए, आपको अगर कोई एडमिन वाला इशू है आप उनको भी मैसेज कर सकते हैं, एंड विद इन 24 आवर्स अगर कोई ग्रीवेंस रिजॉल्व नहीं होता है, सेंड अ मैसेज टू मी। बाकी हम आपको, अभी आपका टेलीग्राम ग्रुप बना होगा, उसमें विल इन्फॉर्म यू एवरीथिंग। सपोर्ट, अगर टेक्निकल कोई पोर्टल पे कुछ एक्सेस का इशू हो रहा है, होम टू मैसेज, होम टू कॉल, बाकी कोऑर्डिनेटर विल ऑलवेज बी अवेलेबल फॉर यू, कोऑर्डिनेटर विल ऑलवेज बी टेकिंग केयर ऑफ योर रिक्वेस्ट। आपको मेंटर्स भी एलोकेट हो जाएंगे, मधु मैम, विशाखा मैम, अकरम सर, ये 3-4 मेंटर्स हैं, इनमें से ही कोई आपको एलोकेट हो जाएंगे। तो यू विल ऑल्सो हैव मेंटरिंग सपोर्ट थ्रू आउट। यू विल ऑल्सो, आफ्टर अगस्त आई विल ऑल्सो बी अवेलेबल टू टेक केयर ऑफ एनी इशू, एनी कंसर्न दैट यू मे हैव। अभी भी अवेलेबल हूँ दिस, अगर आपका ग्रीवेंस रिजॉल्व नहीं हो रहा है, 24 आवर्स में मैसेज कर सकते हो, बट उसके बाद डायरेक्टली भी मुझे मैसेज कर सकते हो। इन द फर्स्ट इंस्टेंस ओनली यू मैसेज मी, I'll be available, I'll be able to take care of it. Right now, next 20 days are a bit tight for me. Like, आज भी मैं यहाँ पे थोड़ा लेट पहुंचा हूँ 5 मिनट, because I was studying till late night. मैं करंट अफेयर्स टीचर हूँ ना, तो करंट अफेयर्स टीचर के साथ प्रॉब्लम ये है, उसे रोज पढ़ना पड़ता है। इफ आई वाज अ हिस्ट्री टीचर और ज्योग्राफी टीचर और पॉलिटी टीचर और इकोनॉमी टीचर, तो क्या होता, जो पढ़ा हुआ है, जो कॉन्सेप्ट्स आते हैं, वो मैं पढ़ा सकता हूँ, बट फॉर मी अ लॉट ऑफ थिंग्स हैपन। अच्छा, ये भी हो गया क्या, a lot of things are completely new, and that is why initially थोड़ा इशू रहेगा। प्लस you will also have access to all your teachers. आपके पास बाबू सर का टेलीग्राम आईडी रहेगा, आपके पास निखिल सर का रहेगा, आप उनको भी डाउट्स मैसेज कर सकते हो, उनसे भी पूछ सकते हो। प्लस every week you'll have a doubt session other than these classes. वेंसडे या थर्सडे को शाम को 7-8 बजे एक जूम सेशन होगा विद योर टीचर्स। जैसे अभी बाबू सर पढ़ा रहे हैं, तो फॉर नेक्स्ट 4 वीक्स, एक तो आप क्लास में भी डाउट्स पूछ सकते हैं, क्लास के बाद भी पूछ सकते हैं, बट विल ऑल्सो हैव ए जूम सेशन। रिवीजन के टाइम आपको लगा कि नहीं, there are some more things that I want to ask, you will be able to ask them that. समझ में आई बात? मेंटरिंग सपोर्ट वाला सिस्टम पूरा समझ में आया? तो क्लासेस आर डन, असेसमेंट इवैल्यूएशन इज डन, मेंटरिंग इज डन। ये तीनों चीजों में हमें पूरी क्लैरिटी है। ओके, नाउ तो दिस वाज अबाउट प्रोग्राम। अभी बिफोर आई गो इनटू अदर एस्पेक्ट्स, प्लीज आस्क मी इफ यू हैव एनी अदर डाउट्स, एनी अदर कंसर्न्स। नहीं, सब सारा क्लैरिटी है सबको? पक्का? तो मैं इसके बाद मैं आपको अभी सैटरडे को मिलने वाला हूं व्हेन योर करंट अफेयर्स क्लासेस वुड हैव, है ना? अब थोड़ा सा ना लेट मी टॉक अबाउट हाउ यू शुड बी शेड्यूलिंग योर डे, है ना? आप लोगों के ऑप्शनल्स क्या है? आपका ऑप्शनल क्या है? पीएसआर आपका, आपका, आपका एंथ्रो, सोशियोलॉजी, कॉमर्स, अक्रम का तो सॉरी मैं कंफ्यूज कर लिया तुम्हें भी स्टूडेंट के लिए। ओके, तो आई हैव पीएसआर, सोशियोलॉजी, कॉमर्स, एंथ्रोपोलॉजी स्टूडेंट। आपकी ऑप्शनल की टाइमिंग्स क्या है क्लासेस की? You haven't taken them yet. Okay, what about rest of you? अच्छा, आपका 5 to 7:30. Okay, okay. है ना? Prefer an optional classes after 2 p.m. Prefer that because मैं क्या चाहता हूँ ना, a student should plan the day in such a manner that let's say you get up at 6 a.m. in the morning, है ना? तो 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. or 2 p.m. or let's say 5 a.m. to 2 p.m. and then 2 p.m. to 11 p.m. or 2 p.m. to 11 p.m. ये दो पार्ट्स ऑफ द डे है। दीज आर टू पार्ट्स ऑफ द डे। 10 कर लेते हैं, लास्ट 1 hour आई डोंट वांट यू टू स्टडी एनीथिंग न्यू। यू शुड डेडिकेट कि दिस इज माय जीएस टाइम टिल दिसंबर। मैं इससे ज्यादा जीएस को नहीं दूंगा। यू मे से कि सर जीएस प्लस एसए आर ऑफ 1250 मार्क्स, ऑप्शनल इज ऑफ ओनली 500 मार्क्स, बट यू आर गिविंग इक्वल टाइम टू देम। You're giving equal time to them. Yes. Optional, we have to study in a bit more depth than GS. Plus, after January, February, when you keep on studying for prelims, you're still studying for your GS. You're not studying for your optional. Right? तो ऑप्शनल को टारगेट करना है बाय दिसंबर पूरा हो। कई बार आपने अब अगर थोड़ा लेट कर रहे हो तो जनवरी फरवरी तक जाएगा, कोई बात, बट मेक इट अ रूल कि यार 2 p.m. my GS work should be done, should be completed. I'm not saying 5 a.m. to 2 p.m. entire 9 hours you'll be able to study. नहीं, perhaps 4-5 घंटे पढ़ पाओगे। ऐसे ही शाम को you'll not be able to study for entire 4-5 घंटे पढ़ पाओगे। Plan your day in such a manner that you dedicate, और sometimes ऐसा होगा कि you may be joining some optional जो 11 बजे है, कुछ वैसा भी हो सकता है, but then plan accordingly कि I have half of the time for GS, half of the time for optional till what, till at least 31st December। हम 31st दिसंबर के बाद जीएस के लिए थोड़ा टाइम बढ़ा देंगे, ऑप्शनल के लिए कम कर देंगे। आफ्टर फरवरी विल स्टॉप डूइंग ऑप्शनल, विल शिफ्ट कंप्लीटली टू जीएस। बट अभी के लिए यू गिव हाफ ऑफ योर टाइम फॉर दिस। पहला एस्पेक्ट क्या सबको समझ में आया, है ना? देन हाउ शुड यू बी प्लानिंग योर डे? देखो, जनरली व्हेन यू हैव ओनली वन जीएस क्लास, अभी यू हैव ओनली वन जीएस क्लास, अभी फॉर नेक्स्ट 1 month यू हैव ओनली वन जीएस क्लास। मेरा रिकमेंडेशन जनरली रहता है बच्चों को कि इफ यू स्पेंडिंग 2.5 hours in class, spend 2.5 hours at, क्या करो, go home and revise your notes. If you are not able to understand something, थोड़ा उसे गूगल करो, थोड़ा समझो उस कॉन्सेप्ट को, ऐसे, है ना? बट देयर वुड बी टाइम्स व्हेन यू विल हैव टू क्लासेस, देयर यू विल नॉट बी एबल टू गिव एग्जैक्टली टू क्लासेस फॉर जीएस। देयर वुड बी टाइम व्हेन यू विल हैव टू क्लासेस फॉर जीएस, जीएस का होगा, सीसैट का होगा, जीएस का होगा, एसए का होगा, या जीएस की ही दो क्लासेस होंगी। Even at those times, what I want is, let's say you have two classes of 2.5 hours each. You have two classes of 2. Is at this time being able to revise everything for 2.5 hours, 2.5 hours again would be not possible because second half में आपको क्या करना है? Optional करना है। Even at this time, you should ensure कि 30 मिनट्स एंड 30 मिनट्स आई एम गोइंग थ्रू व्हाट हैज हैपेंड इन द क्लास। सैटरडे को मेरा रिवीजन होगा टेस्ट से पहले, बड़ा वाला, राइट? बट ये रिवीजन करना है। तो अभी के लिए यू हैव अ लॉट ऑफ टाइम बिकॉज यू हैव ओनली वन क्लास। माय रिकमेंडेशन वुड बी, जून में ना करंट अफेयर्स क्लासेस चालू हो गई थी, उसका एक्सेस आपको मिलेगा। आप अब आप समय निकाल के उन्हें देखना शुरू करिए। फाइन, जब तक आपके पास टाइम है, बिकॉज जून से जो पढ़ाया गया है वो भी तो काम की चीजें ही है ना। दो मैं वो फ्यूचर में दोबारा कराऊंगा, तो इवन इफ यू डोंट वॉच देम प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, बट द पॉइंट इज राइट नाउ यू हैव टाइम, फिनिश देम। व्हाई टू वेट फॉर फ्यूचर? तो जून से जो भी करंट अफेयर्स क्लासेस शुरू हुई हैं, ऑलरेडी 10-12 क्लासेस होंगी, ऑल ऑफ यू स्टार्ट वॉचिंग देम। टेस्ट आएंगे आपके शेड्यूल में, जैसे हम फर्स्ट वीक परहैप्स टेस्ट नहीं होगा, पर उसके अगले वीक से एवरी वीक यू विल हैव टेस्ट। मैं चाहूंगा कि इन द नेक्स्ट 14 डेज व्हेन योर टेस्ट का शेड्यूल, इन योर नेक्स्ट 7 डेज, जब नेक्स्ट मंडे आपको टेस्ट का शेड्यूल मिल जाएगा शायद, आपको क्या करना है, इस 7 दिन में जीएस क्लासेस के साथ ऑलरेडी जो 8-10 कौन सी क्लासेस हो गई हैं करंट अफेयर्स वाली, वाइंड इट अप, समझो। सो दैट व्हेन यू कम टू द क्लास ऑन फ्राइडे सैटरडे संडे, अभी करंट अफेयर्स के लिए यू लाइक, हाँ पुराना जो है मुझे आता है, सर कहां से शुरू कर रहे हैं, मैं आखिरी क्लास तक देख लिया है। You should have clarity for that. Now, those current affairs classes में एक different plan है, उस plan से confuse मत होना, वो current affairs batch के लिए है। आपका plan जो मैं आपको बता रहा हूँ वो है, आप बस वहां पे classes कर लीजिएगा। Don't worry about what I'm saying about the tests there and everything. आपके test का plan ऐसा है। तो how you should plan your day is, uh, one half of the day for GS, one half of the day for optional. Sometimes वो half division possible नहीं होता, because you may have classes of GS from 8 to 10:30 and optional from 11 to 1:30. तो फिर ये ensure करो कि in the second half of the day, half of the time you are giving for GS and half of the time for optional. Try क्या करना है? Try करना है कि यार जो भी मेरी क्लास में हुआ है ना, I'm going home and revising it carefully. जब कम समय है तो I'm just reading the notes once. जब ज्यादा समय है, I'm going through each and everything properly. So your first revision should not be on Saturday. Your first revision should be right after the class. There would be phases जब आप वो रिविजन नहीं कर पा रहे हो, जब क्लासेस दो हो गई है, जब ऑप्शनल का टीचर भी बोल रहा है नहीं नहीं मुझे सिलेबस जनवरी में कंप्लीट करना, मैं भी 2 क्लास लूंगा, ऐसा हो जाता है। और आप मेरे पास सर 4 क्लास हो गए एक दिन में जनवरी में, कैसे करूं? ऐसा फेज आएगा हर हर बच्चे के, क्योंकि यूपीएससी का सिलेबस बहुत वाइड है ना? तो ऐसा फेज आएगा। बस ये कोशिश करो कि हाफ एन आवर, whatever you have written down in your notes, आधे घंटे के लिए उसे रिवाइज कर लो। देयर वुड बी फेज व्हेन यू विल नॉट बी एबल टू डू वेरी रिग्रेस रिविजन। परेशान नहीं हो, अपने आप को स्ट्रेस में नहीं लाना है, प्रोसेस में लगे रहो, डिसिप्लिन तरीके से, थिंग्स वुड इंप्रूव। यू विल गेट टाइम टू रिवाइज एवरीथिंग, यू विल, बट द मोमेंट यू डिसाइड मेरे से नहीं हो रहा, मैं नहीं कर रहा, तो फिर नहीं हो रहा, नहीं कर रहे, राइट? द मोमेंट यू स्टार्ट फीलिंग मैं नहीं जा रहा कल से क्लास, मैं वीडियोस में देखूंगा बाद में, अकेले, बाद में कभी नहीं आता। योर कॉम्पिटिटर्स आर स्टडिंग, वो बाद का वेट नहीं कर रहे हैं, बाद में वो दूसरा रिवीजन कर रहे होंगे, तीसरा रिवीजन कर रहे होंगे। Out of 10 lakh people who will apply for the exam, 5 lakh people who will appear for the exam, only 2% will clear pre. 98% of the students don't clear pre. हम ऐसा नहीं करते कि हम आपका चांस 100% से इम्प्रूव, नहीं, हमारे यहाँ से 15-20% बच्चे प्री क्लियर करेंगे। आपकी क्लास में जितने बच्चे हैं उनमें से 15-20% बच्चे प्री क्लियर करेंगे, तो 2% से हम 20% चांसेस बढ़ा सकते हैं। इन जनरल आउट ऑफ 5 लाख पीपल 10,000 पीपल विल क्लियर प्री, वी विल इंक्रीज दैट 2% चांस टू 20%. You have to be in that top 20%. In fact, I tell students, टेस्ट में क्या होना चाहिए? टेस्ट में you should be in top 10 percentile. पहले 1 मंथ में आपके टेस्ट, थोड़ा आपका नया वाला बैच है, छोटे बैच के साथ हो रहा है, बट a month later when I start teaching economy, I'll be teaching economy for all the batches. तो आपका टेस्ट बड़े वाले बैच के साथ होगा, you will be able to have better understanding of the ranks. कि रैंक अभी कम बच्चों में रैंक मिलेगी तो पता नहीं चलेगा, बट जब आपको 200-300 बच्चों में रैंक मिलेगी तो यू हैव टू बी इन टॉप 20, टॉप 30. नाउ यू विल से सर सब टॉप 20 टॉप 30 में कैसे आएंगे? कोई तो 40-50 में रहेगा, रहेगा। बट देखो, व्हेन यू ऑल ट्राई टू डू बेटर, टू बी देयर, व्हाट हैपेंस, मैं भी बोल रहा हूँ 15-20% बच्चे विल क्लियर प्री। क्या पता 30% बच्चे स्टार्ट क्लियरिंग प्री, व्हेन एवरीवन इज पुटिंग एफर्ट्स टू बी देयर। क्या पता 40% ऑफ आवर स्टूडेंट्स start clearing pre, right? The point is, try to be there. You will not be perfect on the very first day. You will not know how to write answers on the very first day, but you will have to start writing answers. ये मत सोचना अभी तो मुझे आता नहीं, मैं 2 महीने बाद शुरू करूंगा, 3 महीने पहले नॉलेज बेस बनाता हूं। नहीं, आपके आंसर्स में जो जो लिखना है वो हम आपको प्रिपेयर कर देंगे, कंटेंट का इशू नहीं रहेगा। आपको लिखना शुरू करना है, वहां जो प्रॉब्लम्स है, आवर टीम विल हेल्प यू आउट इन चेंजिंग दैट। प्रॉब्लम कहां आती है ना, लॉट ऑफ स्टूडेंट्स कम टू अस आफ्टर प्री एंड से, सर मैंने यहाँ पे फाउंडेशन कोर्स तो किया था, बट आई हैव नॉट रिटन अ सिंगल आंसर। अब मुझे समझ में नहीं आ रहा मैं क्या करूं। वो 2-3 महीने में ना आंसर राइटिंग इंप्रूव, आंसर राइटिंग आपको अभी डेवलप करनी पड़ेगी, एंड दैट इज व्हाई राइट फ्रॉम फर्स्ट वीक व्हाट डू यू हैव, वी हैव अ टेस्ट, subjective test also, mains test also. We don't have only objective test, proper mains tests भी है आपके, and we will have that. ठीक है, तो आपको दिन कैसे शेड्यूल करना है? दिन ऐसे शेड्यूल करना है, जीएस क्लासेस, रिवीजन, ऑप्शनल क्लासेस, रिवीजन, कई बार 2 जीएस क्लासेस हो रही होंगी, वहां पे भी हाफ एन आवर का रिवीजन। बट व्हेन व्हाट यू शुड बी डूइंग इज, लास्ट 1 आवर ऑफ द डे, अच्छा उससे पहले you should have a schedule. You should not work randomly in the sense, let's say prakriti is very hard working and she's like, नहीं मैं तो 16 घंटे पढ़ूंगी, but if she doesn't have this, no, कि I'll be studying from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. तो ये 16 घंटे पढ़ ले, उसका कोई मतलब नहीं है। You should have कि this is my study time, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. is my study time, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. is my dinner break, 9 to 9:30 is my walk break, डिनर के बाद मेरे को वॉक करना पसंद है, 9:30 to 10:30 I'll again study. You should have that slot for what? For studies, and वहां पे do not let anything distract you. If you will give priority to something else, exam will give priority to someone else. आपने पढ़ने का एक शेड्यूल बनाया, बता दो पेरेंट्स को भी कि मॉम 6 to 8 में आई विल नॉट बी पिकिंग अप कॉल्स, बिकॉज मैं फोन साइलेंट पे रख के बगल में रख देते, बिकॉज 6 to 8 में आई वांट टू बी फुली फोकस्ड हियर। यू विल बी लाइक ऐसे कैसे सर, मम्मी पापा के कॉल तो वो सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट है, हाँ, पर एक साल, अगले एक साल के लिए मेक सिविल सर्विसेज एग्जामिनेशन द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग इन योर लाइफ, सो दैट they're very selective. मैंने प्री में बोला 2% बच्चे सिलेक्ट हो रहे हैं, out of 10,000 people eventually 1,000 people are going to get selected, eventually 0.2% people are going to get selected, out of 5 lakh people 1,000 बहुत कम नंबर है, 2%, 10,000 तो 2% है, पर फाइनल सिलेक्शन कितना, 1,000 बच्चों का, उसमें से भी आईएएस कितने, आईएएस आईपीएस आईएफएस टॉप 200 रैंक्स। तो इफ यू विल नॉट प्रायोरिटाइज दिस एग्जाम, समवन एल्स विल प्रायोरिटाइज इट। आप बोलोगे नहीं नहीं मेरा पड़ोसी तो मेरे से कम पढ़ा, नहीं वो भी सिलेक्ट नहीं होगा, 100 में से 2 होने हैं प्री में, फाइनल सिलेक्शन 1,000 में से 2 होने हैं। 1,000 बच्चों में से तो कोई होगा ना जो इस एग्जाम को सबसे ज्यादा प्रायोरिटी दे रहा होगा। प्रायोरिटाइज इट, प्रायोरिटाइज इट कैसे, दीज 2 hours आर फॉर माई स्टडी एंड आई एम डेडिकेटिंग। भगवान में भी श्रद्धा जब पूरे मन से करोगे ना, तभी भगवान मिलते हैं, कई बार वो भी नहीं मिलते, राइट? यहां पे भी आपको उस फोकस से पढ़ना होगा। तो हैव अ टाइम लाइन, हैव अ टाइम फॉर, लाइक मेरा सोने का टाइम 12 बजे है तो है, नहीं मैं आज 4 बजे तक पढ़ूंगा, नहीं। 4 बजे तक क्यों पढ़ रहे हो? क्योंकि ना आपने पूरा सिस्टम फॉलो नहीं किया है। The moment you break your schedule, next day you'll waste your whole day and you'll feel like, oh, I've worked so hard, that's why I was tired. Nahi, because you are indisciplined, that's why you're tired. You should be studying for you should be sleeping for 6-7 hours every day, jitna requirement hai. Some of you may require to sleep for 6 hours, some of you may require to sleep for 7 hours. Kisi ka aadat 8 घंटे सोने का है. Have a good night's sleep. That's very important for your mental health, for your physical health, and most importantly for your preparation for your selection. Okay, so coming back to, you should have what? You should have a well-defined schedule. Let's say you decide, let's say Prakriti decides कि नहीं मुझे रोज 12 बजे रात में सोना है या 11 बजे सोना है. Let's say she's a वो sincere वाला person जो सुबह 5-6 बजे उठने वाला है. She sleeps at 11. तो she should end all her studies at 10 p.m. अपन ने जीएस और ऑप्शनल पढ़ने का जो प्लान किया था ना, जीएस पढ़ेंगे उसको रिवाइज करेंगे, ऑप्शनल पढ़ेंगे उसको रिवाइज करेंगे, that all should end by 10 p.m. 1 hour before your sleep time. Then what you should do is, for 15 minutes you should prepare yourself for bed. Go and brush your teeth. हाथ मुंह धो. सोने से पहले कोई शावर लेना चाहता है लो. But last 45 minutes of the day, 15-20 minutes में ये करोगे. Last 45 minutes of the day, every day, revise whatever you did in the whole day. जीएस की क्लासेस करी, जीएस की क्लास करने के बाद उसे रिवाइज भी किया. ऑप्शनल की क्लासेस करी, उसके बाद रिवाइज भी किया. कोई बात नहीं. बिफोर गोइंग टू बेड, I'll go through everything that was done in the whole day. First revision was after the class, second revision was at the end of the day. I'll tell you, revisions are more important than keeping on studying new things. For a fresher, प्रॉब्लम क्या होता है? For a fresher, उनके लिए ना बहुत सारी नई चीजें मिलती है, उन्हें पढ़ने में बड़ा मजा आता है. And they think, एक चैप्टर हिस्ट्री का और रीड कर लेता है, रिविजन होता रहेगा. You will feel like that. You'll enjoy it. But नहीं. More important than studying new thing is revising. तो so that आपने घर जाके चाहे आधा घंटा मिला, अभी you will get a lot of time, but in future you may have only half an hour to revise one class. You revise it there, underline the key things. अच्छा ये एक important, ये 4 dimensions है. What are the causes of Battle of Plassey? ये 5 causes. At night, just go through those 5 causes again, so that when you close your eyes and you think, यार वो Battle of Plassey के 5 causes क्या याद है? याद है. You will have good night's sleep. You'll be happy before you go to bed. You'll not be stressed, यार आज दिन भर क्या किया है, मुझे कुछ आ भी रहा है, नहीं भी आ रहा है. Do this. Then on Saturday, you should be like, अब आ रहा है test. That will be your third revision. The weekly test should be your third revision. Monthly test should be your fourth revision. Quarterly test should be your fifth revision. 6 monthly test should be your sixth revision. अगर आप ये सब कर रहे हो ना, I assure you, you are going to get selected. हम वो नहीं कर रहे 100% सिलेक्शन गारंटी, हम कर रहे हैं सिलेक्शन गारंटी इफ यू आर फॉलोइंग ऑल दीज थिंग्स, राइट? तो हैव अ प्लान लाइक दैट. एवरी डे इन योर डे इंक्लूड हाफ एन आवर ऑफ वॉक. जितना हो सके ट्राई टू मूव अराउंड. इफ यू लिव इन ORN करोल बाग, ई रिक्शा में नहीं आना है, पैदल आओ. यहां पे लिफ्ट नहीं लेना है, स्टेयर्स लो, स्टेयर्स से उतरो. बिकॉज कई बार फिजिकल एक्टिविटी का टाइम नहीं मिल रहा है, बट स्टिल यू शुड बी मूविंग. यू शुड नॉट गेट लिथार्जिक. योर बॉडी शुड स्वेट. व्हेन यू स्वेट, good hormones are released in your body which makes you happy, which makes you active. समय है तो spend 30 minutes 45 minutes in a park at least till October के बाद it gets very polluted. उसके बाद घर में ही कुछ एक्सरसाइज करने का सिनेरियो ढूंढना पड़ेगा. अक्टूबर के बाद दिल्ली becomes a gas chamber. Delhi is, I generally do not recommend people to join gyms, but अक्टूबर के बाद मैं बोलता भाई भागो मत, पार्क में जाओ, जिम ही चले जाओ. आई डोंट से कि जिम विम, वो मेरे को लगता है कि वो नहीं करना चाहिए. अपनी बॉडी वेट एक्सरसाइज करो, पार्क में जाके वो सारी चीजें करो. डोंट गो अननेसेसरली टू जिम. बट एनीवेज, कमिंग बैक टू you'll have to plan your day in a very systematic manner even to get selected. The most sincere student, the most hardworking student, the most well learned student is not going to get selected. वो student जो ज्यादा disciplined है, ज्यादा revision कर रहा है, is going to get selected. जिस स्टूडेंट का टाइम है कि 8 to 10 PM मेरा पढ़ने का टाइम है, वो स्टूडेंट इज गोइंग टू गेट सिलेक्टेड. ठीक है, तो दिस इज द लास्ट थिंग दैट आई वांटेड टू से. अदर देन क्लासेस, यू विल आल्सो हैव टू इंश्योर कि आपका एक शेड्यूल बना हुआ है कि सर ये मेरा 45 मिनट्स वॉक का टाइम है, ये मेरा आधे घंटे लंच का टाइम है, ये मेरा इस चीज का टाइम है, ये मेरा पेरेंट्स से बात करने का टाइम है, ये मेरा बॉयफ्रेंड गर्लफ्रेंड से बात करने का टाइम है. सब फिक्स कर लो. बाकी सारी चीजें क्या करनी है, पढ़ाई के लिए देनी है. वो जो 2 घंटे पढ़ाई के हैं उसमें किसी का भी कॉल आए नहीं उठाना है. और कोई ये नहीं समझ रहा, आपको लग रहा है कि आपकी गर्लफ्रेंड, आपका बॉयफ्रेंड बड़ा ही वो है कि नहीं, वो बात नहीं करोगे तो नाराज हो जाएगा, तो उसे छोड़ दो. अगर समवन इज नॉट अंडरस्टैंडिंग कि योर एग्जाम इज सो क्रूशियल, सो इंपॉर्टेंट, दैट पर्सन विल हैम्पर योर प्रिपरेशन. यू शुड हैव सम पीपल हु अंडरस्टैंड यू, पीपल हु सपोर्ट यू over the next 1.5 years, at least till mains next year. Okay, now if online students have any doubts, please let me know. Sir, you said in a CA class that you will cover science tech and बेटा मैं ना जीएस फाउंडेशन का, करंट अफेयर्स का, सबका साइंस टेक जनवरी में शुरू करता हूँ. आई टेक इट एलैबोरेटली देयर ओनली. अभी आपके ये मंडे टू सैटरडे वाली क्लास में साइंस टेक शेड्यूल नहीं करता. साइंस टेक आई कवर इट विद करंट अफेयर्स ओनली, बट वो मैं बेसिक्स के साथ करता हूँ. साइंस टेक में आई टेक अराउंड व्हाट 50 आवर्स ऑफ क्लासेस. जनरली करंट अफेयर्स में 50 आवर्स ऑफ क्लासेस नहीं लेते हैं, बट फॉर साइंस एनवायरनमेंट आई टेक इट बिकॉज आई डू ऑल द फाउंडेशन थिंग्स. ओके, मटेरियल, यू विल हैव मटेरियल फॉर एवरीथिंग. सम हमारे यहाँ सारे टीचर्स आपको अपना मटेरियल प्रोवाइड करते हैं. जैसे आई एम योर इकोनॉमी टीचर, आई विल नॉट रिकमेंड यू टू हैव एनी बुक फॉर इकोनॉमी. मैं खुद आपको इकोनॉमी का मटेरियल दूंगा बाय गोइंग थ्रू ऑल द बुक्स एंड एवरीथिंग. ऑल द यूजफुल कंटेंट वुड बी देयर. निखिल सर आपको हिस्ट्री पढ़ाएंगे. निखिल सर ऑलरेडी ज्यादा पढ़ लेते हैं, कम नहीं. तो व्हेन यू गो थ्रू हिज मटेरियल, यू विल नॉट फाइंड एनीथिंग इन एनसीईआरटी और एनीवेयर व्हिच इज नॉट देयर इन द मटेरियल. So every teacher has their own method. Before the class, you will have material uploaded on your portal. Before the class, you will have handouts. जैसे आज आप आए हो तो आपको पॉलिटी के handouts मिले हैं. You will have this, but some teachers may give recommendation. जैसे पॉलिटी वाले सर में से, I do not know whether he'll say it, कि लक्ष्मीकांत भी लेना है, या ज्योग्राफी वाले सर में से कि एनसीईआरटी भी लेना है. वो आप फॉलो करिए. अदरवाइज वी विल प्रोवाइड यू ऑल द मटेरियल, अपडेटेड मटेरियल. जैसे मैं करंट अफेयर्स टीचर हूँ, मैं आपको सैटरडे को पढ़ाने आऊंगा. टिल फ्राइडे जो भी अपडेट्स होंगे उस पर्टिकुलर टॉपिक पे जो पढ़ाने आ रहा हूँ, वो आपको मिलेंगे. तो डू नॉट एक्सपेक्ट कि मैं आपको साइंस का मटेरियल अभी दे दूंगा. नहीं, जब मैं आपको जनवरी में साइंस पढ़ाने वाला हूँ, आई विल इंश्योर कि दिसंबर तक जो भी करंट अफेयर्स अपडेट्स हो, वो सारे उस मटेरियल में होना चाहिए. यू शुड हैव द लेटेस्ट मोस्ट अपडेटेड मटेरियल. मैं अभी आपको दूंगा तो क्या दूंगा? जो पिछले साल तक मटेरियल प्रिपेयर्ड है, दोस आर नॉट अपडेटेड, है ना. तो वील ऑल ऑफ यू विल हैव मटेरियल, वी विल प्रोवाइड इट. एंड जो ऑनलाइन बच्चे हैं, दे विल हैव इट ऑन देयर पोर्टल 1 hour बिफोर एवरी क्लास. दे विल हैव इट. मैं प्रेफर करता हूं कि स्टूडेंट शुड हैव मटेरियल इन फ्रंट ऑफ देम. इन माय क्लासेस आई डू नॉट फोकस अ लॉट ऑन डिक्टेशन. आई फोकस ऑन समझते हैं चीजों को. तो मैं चाहता हूं आपके सामने मटेरियल हो, सो दैट यू आर एबल टू गो थ्रू ईच ऑफ द लाइन एंड आर लाइक हाँ सब समझ में आ रहा है, रादर देन सर कुछ बोल रहे. आई दिस इज माय टीचिंग स्टाइल इज डिफरेंट और निखिल सर टीचिंग स्टाइल इज डिफरेंट. तो हर टीचर का तरीका अलग अलग है. वी डोंट फोर्स टीचर्स टू नहीं सबको एक ही तरीके में आना है. सब जिस तरीके से सबसे अच्छा पढ़ाना समझते हैं उस तरीके से पढ़ाएंगे. बट यू विल हैव स्टडी मटेरियल फॉर एवरीथिंग ऑन योर पोर्टल ऑल्सो अपलोडेड. जो ऑफलाइन बच्चे हैं उनको फिजिकली भी मिलेगा, आप पोर्टल से भी. तो ऑफलाइन स्टूडेंट्स हैव बोथ ऑफलाइन ऑनलाइन एक्सेस. ऑनलाइन स्टूडेंट्स के पास सिर्फ ऑनलाइन एक्सेस होता है. दे विल बी एबल टू गेट इट फ्रॉम देयर पोर्टल. एनी अदर डाउट्स गाइस? एनी अदर कंसर्न्स? अदरवाइज बहुत टाइम हो गया. I'll ask बाबू सर टू स्टार्ट टेकिंग क्लासेस. कोई और कंसर्न आप लोगों के? नहीं, ऑल ऑफ यू हैव क्लैरिटी ऑन दिस थिंग. ऑनलाइन स्टूडेंट्स, अक्षत, आयुष, आयुषी, रेणुका, हेमंत, मोपी, प्रवीण, राघवेंद्र, रितिका, सैफ, सौजन्या, साइली, सुबोध. Any doubts, guys? Sir, I've done post-graduation in English literature. Can I go with the same as optional subject? Guide me a little. Yes, you can go with English literature as optional subject. बस जो प्रॉब्लम क्या रहता है ना, इंग्लिश लिटरेचर में बहुत गाइडेंस अवेलेबल नहीं होता. बट रिसेंटली आई मेट वन ऑफ द स्टूडेंट्स, शी इज एन आईपीएस ऑफिसर, अभी सिलेक्ट हुई है विद इंग्लिश लिटरेचर. आई विल ट्राई टू गेट यू कनेक्टेड विद हर सो दैट आप वो ले लो. बट इफ यू हैव डन योर ग्रेजुएशन, पोस्ट ग्रेजुएशन इन अ सब्जेक्ट, दैट्स अ गुड सब्जेक्ट टू टेक फॉर ऑप्शनल. When will we get our mentor? In 1 or 2 days on your telegram channel only we will publish the list of mentors जो अलग अलग बच्चों को allocated है, and you will have that list, and you will also have number of your mentors. Okay, any other thing? That would be great help to me, sir. हाँ, definitely beta, we'll get you in touch with some English literature topper. नहीं, चलिए, थैंक यू वेरी मच. ऑल ऑफ यू हैव माय नंबर, है ना? तो कोई भी इशू होता है, कोई भी कंसर्न होता है, सेंड मी अ मैसेज. डोंट कॉल मी, मैं कॉल्स पिक नहीं कर पाता हूं बिकॉज आई एम इन क्लास मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम और आई एम स्टडीइंग मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम. मैं अपनी पढ़ाई को प्रायोरिटी पे रखता हूं, फोन साइलेंट पे पड़ा रहेगा साइड में. एंड आई डोंट कॉल बैक पीपल. मैं मैसेजेस देखता हूं और मुझे वहां पे कुछ इंपॉर्टेंट लगता है तो आई कॉल देम बैक. तो आई विल कॉल यू बैक. यू डू नॉट कॉल मी बैक. वो अननोन नंबर से कॉल्स आते हैं, मैं वैसे भी नहीं उठाता हूं. मैसेज करो, सर आई एम अ स्टूडेंट ऑफ दिस बैच, दिस इज माई नेम, एंड ये मेरी प्रॉब्लम है जो रिजॉल्व नहीं हो रही है, या ये मुझे समझ में नहीं आ रहा, प्लीज हेल्प मी आउट. यू विल बी एबल टू डू दैट. तो सीधे कॉल मत करिएगा, वो नहीं उठ पाते हैं. ठीक है, चलिए, थैंक यू वेरी मच. आई एम होपिंग दैट द नेक्स्ट 12-13 मंथ्स में आप सब इतने प्रिपेयर्ड रहोगे कि प्री मेन सब कुछ अच्छे से कर पाओगे, है ना? तो ऑल द वेरी बेस्ट फॉर योर यूपीएससी जर्नी. This is one of the toughest examinations in the world. I'm telling you as a teacher, this is one of the toughest examinations in the world, not because the papers are difficult, concepts are difficult, because it requires a lot of discipline, consistency. It's a marathon जहां पे आपको सबसे ज्यादा फिट रहना पड़ेगा थ्रू आउट द जर्नी. तो keep this in mind. Okay, thank you very much.
Good morning to all of you. All right. Okay, Santosh sir was taking, I think, overall, probably I do not know, but I think he would have given overall overview of probably the exam, or maybe would have taken up the queries, or probably briefed about the course, whatever it is. I'll give a brief introduction about the subject, okay? So I'm not going to the general thing. I'll give a brief introduction about the subject and then we'll directly get into the subject. So first, let me very quickly brief about myself. My name is Babu Gunashekaran, and I've cleared this examination also a few times, but I've been teaching for the last 10 years. And as a student, if you see, I have been preparing from 2009. So it's almost like 16, 17 years of experience in UPSC. And I've been teaching way back from 2016. So it is almost 10 years now, okay? Teaching, mentoring the students and all those things. With that, we'll get into the subject. I'll be covering your Indian polity as well as governance, which is their part of your GS paper 2. Your Indian polity is overlapping for both prelims and mains, whereas the governance area could be mostly for the mains examination. Yes, there may be 1 or 2 questions probably they can ask in the prelims exam, but generally the larger focus is not there. They may ask 1 question probably from the schemes and all those things. So that's the idea that you should have. So I'll be handling both the things for your batch. Can anyone tell me what is the weightage of the subject Indian polity when it comes to the prelims exam? Because you know the exam is, if you see UPSC exam, when it comes to there are two important stages. One is prelims, and then of course you'll go to the mains examination. Of course, there is interview, but interview has nothing specifically related to a particular subject. And everything under the sky can be asked in the interview, although a pointed preparation will help you to do well in the interview, where most of the questions are likely to be asked from your DAF, which you will understand later. There's something which is called as detailed application form, which you have to go fill before you go to the mains examination, and that will be further be in the hands of the board members when they take up the interview session. Anyways, the prelims, mains. Can anyone tell me what is the weightage of the subject Indian Polity in prelims? 20 marks, okay, out of 200 marks. Any other opinion on that? About 10 to 15 questions or marks? Questions. So you are saying it shall be in the range of 20 to 30 marks. Okay. So normally we cannot exactly predict. So more likely it will come in the range, because somewhere it can be less, somewhere it can be more. But on an average, if you see, how do we calculate the average? We take the average of 5 years. So on an average, if you take the 5 years average, it is not less than 15 questions. There were individual years where it was less. Individual years it has gone up to 18, 19 questions. Individual year it was 12, 13 questions also. But on an average, 15 questions. That means in terms of marks, how much you can expect? 30 marks. 30 marks means it is almost 1/3 of the marks that you need to qualify. Don't see the total marks. All that you need is around roughly 80 to 90 marks to qualify. So if you can do it well, 1/3 of the marks is likely to come from this particular area. So questions may come from the other areas also. You should prepare everything, but there are certain areas which, if you do well, the better returns can come. Okay, so polity is one such area. But having said that, polity is also an area where you can easily make mistakes. So don't take it as a very easy subject. This is also a subject which will give you nightmares, in the sense that you will think that you are right. When you come out of the examination, check the answer, you would have made a very silly mistake. And you'll have to be very careful reading it between words. This is one such subject. So that is again very important. So every sentence may have a minor twist and turns, which you will understand as we'll proceed with the subject. All right, so this is for the prelims. And what about for the mains examination? How much marks? In fact, mains, we know it is part of GS paper 2. And we know every GS paper is for 250 marks. And if you see GS paper 2, I'll majorly divide that into 4 areas. Is anyone aware of the syllabus and all those things? So I'll recommend you, even before starting, you should be well versed with the syllabus. That is going to immensely help you in the preparation process. Even if you're not aware of right now, you try to see that syllabus for every day on a regular basis, 5 to 10 minutes, so that you are well aware of what is there in the syllabus. Can anyone quickly tell me what could be the advantage of knowing the syllabus? Anyways, you may think that I am going to read all those things. Why do I remember the syllabus? Very good. So when you read the paper, only when you know the syllabus, you may identify, you will be able to understand, okay, this may be relevant to certain areas in the syllabus. Otherwise, you will be lost. You do not know what is required for the examination, what is not required for the examination. Okay, so that is very, very important that you know the syllabus, not only for GS paper 2, for all the areas, even for your optional. Okay, one is, yes, you can identify the current affairs, I understand, but otherwise also why syllabus is important. Clarity on how to study, okay, that comes at the later stage. Like clarity on what to study will help you, whether you have covered everything or not, all the topics are covered. But when you write the mains examination, knowing the syllabus, how it can help you, which is long way to go. Maybe I think you all may appear for 2026 prelims. Some of you might even appear later than that. But whatever may be the year that you're going to appear, you have to go through these phases. So how knowing the syllabus can help in the mains examination? Very good. You can interlink. Sometimes you don't even understand where the question has been asked. Especially in your optional, you will feel that not when I say remember the syllabus, not only for your general studies, but also for your optional subject. Sometimes you will not be able to what this question is all about. You may have the content, but you're not able to locate from which area it has been asked. But when you know the syllabus, you will be able to locate, okay, this topic is relevant to this particular area, and therefore it will help you to write better answers. So all successful students have done one thing, and what they have done is they're well aware of the syllabus, not only in GS but also in their optional. So this is something you'll have to do. Okay, so that's very important. Okay, so if you broadly divide general studies paper 2, I would say it is polity, and then after polity you have got governance, social justice, and then you have international relations. So this is how broadly this subject can be categorized. The syllabus can be categorized into different subject matters. So each and every part, they have their own weightage. Can anyone tell me how much weightage is for polity, governance, social justice, and IR? And UPSC has been following a very fixed pattern. Minor differences can be there, maybe a difference of 10 to 20 marks, but otherwise for the last 10, 12 years, they have been following a very fixed pattern. Does anyone know when this new pattern of GS was introduced? Any idea? Earlier there was an old pattern, but in 2013 UPS introduces new pattern, and since 2013 they have been following this particular pattern. So what is the mark for polity? Can anyone tell approximately? Very good. 100 to 110 marks. So even let us assume 100. So that's not a less mark. That has got the highest weightage in the entire GS paper 2. And then what about governance? It is 40 to 50 marks. Sometimes it can be more in polity. So that will be adjusted in the governance. So overall polity and governance is not less than 150 marks. This is the weightage that they ask in polity and governance. Then social justice 50 marks, international relations 50 marks. Of course, these two things are not in my domain, your social justice part and international relations. The respective teacher will take it. But polity and governance is in my domain. And my idea is if the students are attending my classes, I should empower you to get 80% of these marks. When I say 80% of these marks, you should be comfortable in answering at least 120 marks out of this 150 marks. That doesn't mean that you will get 120 out of 120, because the way the UPSC mark is extremely low. I mean, getting 50% of the marks is considered to be a very good score. But however, at least you should be in a position to attempt these areas, because nobody can predict 100% of the questions. But yes, we'll try to increase our potential, but we'll be at least prepared for 80% of the questions. So this is what is the idea. So that's a basic introduction that I wanted to give. So if this is clear, we can directly get into the subject. And the subject Indian polity is largely study of the Constitution of India. As a student preparing for UPSC, it is very must you have a broader understanding of the Constitution of India. You don't have to know about every law in our country, but you should be aware of the fundamental law of our country. And what is the fundamental law of our country? It is the Constitution of India. So therefore, you should be aware of the most of the provisions in the Constitution, which we are going to discuss. As we'll proceed, we'll study, we'll try to understand the different parts in the Constitution. We'll try to understand as to the kind of debates that has happened in the Constituent Assembly. Have you heard of the word Constituent Assembly? Can anyone tell me what in your understanding is this particular body, the Constituent Assembly? If you know it, you can just tell me, otherwise it's okay. It's a body that drafted the Constitution of India. All right, no issues. Okay, I'll just continue. I just want to know your background, like among the students, online students. You can also put it in the comment box. How many of you completed your graduation? You were still in the graduation. Which year? Third year. And what are you doing? Sociology honors from here, Delhi. Those who completed the graduation, somebody who are doing your post graduation, or you're just preparing. Okay. How many of you have a background in Indian polity, or in, say, let us assume, uh, political science? When I say background, it can be public administration, it can be political science, it can be law. Okay, BA economics, political science, sociology. Okay, political science honors completed. You have background? No background. Political science. Okay, what is your background? Okay, BCom honors, BTech, so no idea about BCom, so no idea. All right, no issues. The good thing about UPSC is your UPSC is having a level playing field. Especially when it comes to general studies, the questions will be asked in such a way that every common person with a general awareness would be able to answer such questions. That doesn't mean without preparation they can do it. With preparation, if you have a general awareness, you will be answering to the general studies question. That is how the questions are designed. And I have seen from my own personal experience, the students who doesn't have any background in polity, probably they will follow well in the class. It doesn't mean those who have background, they will not follow it well. But if you don't have a background, but still, if you keep listening and continuing what is happening in the class, listen to what is there in the class, go and revise it, ask the doubts. If you follow this particular thing, you will also be okay. No issues. Okay. Because whatever you have learned till this point of time will be a different level. So now you are taking you to the next level, because UPSC preparation, which is considered one of the toughest examination, you have a better understanding of the concepts, which we'll do as we'll proceed. Okay, I said that whatever we are going to study majorly about the polity is the Constitution of India. And what is Constitution of India? I would say it is the fundamental rule book of our country. I'm using the word fundamental rule book of the country to put it in a very simple way. Is what is the Constitution. Okay, I'll just come back to the explanation of the Constitution. So who drafted this Constitution of our country? It is the members of the Constituent Assembly. I think most of you might have heard about this, the word Constituent Assembly. Constituent Assembly was having a group of people, and it is those group of people who discussed, who deliberated, and then they finally drafted the Constitution, which was adopted by the Constituent Assembly. Suppose let us assume you are all the people in the Constituent Assembly. You have debated yourself, learned people were part of the Constituent Assembly. They debated, they discussed, and then they finally put that particular constitution to vote, and they adopted this particular constitution. And does anyone know when finally the constitution came into force? It is on 26th January 1950, which is also the day we celebrate as what is called as a Republic Day. So from that point of time till this point of time, we have a constitution. And it is based on which our country is governed. So based on what our country is governed? It is based on the Constitution of India. We are not concerned about the other constitution. Our country has our own constitution. And it is based on this constitution our country is governed. So how do we define the constitution? Constitution is nothing but the fundamental rule book of our country. So that's the simplest way I can explain. All right, so why I'm saying it is a fundamental rule book of the country. So this you should again understand why it is called as the fundamental rule book. Now, this is not the only rule in our country. There are a number of rules in our country, apart from what is not there in the constitution. Can you give me an example of when you started from the home today? Probably you reach the LevelUp office. Probably you'll have to follow certain rules. From there till here, when you reach, can you just tell me that this is the rule that I have followed? Every one of you, can you just think about that? Okay, today morning I woke up, I came here. So these are the rules probably I'll have to follow by the time I reach LevelUp office. Can you give me an example? Yes, very good. Traffic rules. You're supposed to follow the traffic rules. Anything else? Probably somebody would have traveled in public transportation system. So in the public transportation system, you'll have to take the ticket. That's a rule. Without ticket, you cannot travel. Somebody would have traveled by road. You'll have to follow the traffic system. Okay, we come to LevelUp office. Probably LevelUp might say that you should come on time. I do not know whether that rule is properly, strictly implemented or not, but probably that could be a rule. Let us assume. If you don't come on time, probably will not let you entry into the classroom. So these are all the different types of rules, just to give an example. But can anyone tell me that among the rules, 3 examples that you have seen, which may be relevant to you right now, but on a day-to-day life, you will have to follow a number of other rules also, but just a small example which you can correlate. Now, out of these 3 things, can anyone tell me which of these things are part of the Constitution of India? One is following the traffic rules. Second is getting ticket. Probably let us assume that you have traveled in the Delhi metro. So taking ticket in the Delhi metro, then you reach LevelUp office. In the LevelUp office, you reached on time, so therefore they allowed you to enter into the class. Let us assume these are the rules. Now, how many of these rules are part of the Constitution of India? Directly? No, none of these rules. How many of you are so confident none of these rules are not there in the Constitution? None of these rules are not in the Constitution. Just guess it. How many of you think yes, something may be part of the Constitution? How many of you think no, none of these things are part of the Constitution? Just guess. No issues. If you make a mistakes, we will learn from that. The first one might be the rules, traffic rules. Okay. Definitely not taking a ticket from the public transportation system and the rules in the LevelUp office. Constitution was drafted in 1950. Nobody would definitely know that LevelUp will come in the first place. So 1950 there was no concept of metro also. But 1950 there were roads. So do you think that following the traffic rules would be part of the Constitution at the time? Maybe amended later. Very good. So you are bringing one more technical word, amended. We'll discuss about that later. But as of now, when I say today Constitution, so today do you think it is part of the Constitution? Because it is not that our Constitution is as it was in 1950. Though we had a Constitution that came into force on 1950, that Constitution kept on evolving. That Constitution is also considered to be a living document. Now, what do you mean by a living document? As a person, do we grow as a living being, as a human being? The Constitution also keeps on growing. It does not grow physically because it's not a living thing. But yes, it keeps on changing for a period of time. That changes happens through what is called as amendment process. So my question is, presently, do you think whatever I discussed is part of the Constitution? The Constitution as on today date is 21st of July 2025. As on today, how many of these things are part of the Constitution? None of these things are part of the Constitution. Be very clear about it. That is why I said how I define the Constitution is a fundamental rule book. But this is not the only rule based on which the country is governed. There can be number of rules based on which the country can be governed. But among them, what is so fundamental, what is so important is whatever the rules that is laid down in the Constitution. So in the subject Indian polity, we are not concerned about studying the ordinary rules, but we are more concerned about studying what is there in the Constitution of India. Because it will take a lifetime to study all these rules. And UPSC does not expect a person who is appearing for civil service examination to be an expert in the areas of law. And there could be many specialists for that particular purpose. As a person who is an administrator, you should be aware of the general provisions in the Constitution. So we'll focus on that. So none of things I discuss is not part of the Constitution of India. The Constitution of India discusses only about the very important rules, which is related to the governance of our country. So therefore, how do you define? First thing you should be very clear, it is a fundamental rule book of our country. Therefore, a question arises, what are the fundamental rules that is laid down in the Constitution? So I said that the Constitution is the fundamental rule book. And if you see further the Constitution, what are the fundamental rules? It gives us the idea of how India is to be governed. So who tells us the information as to how India is to be governed? Constitution. Who is to govern? Who are to be governed? And if somebody is to govern, how that government is to be established? Who are supposed to vote? When the elections are likely to happen? Who will conduct the elections? Now there is a need to answer all these questions. And who is answering and providing the rules for all those things? It is the Constitution of India. So only the most important things, the most fundamental things based on which the country, it is essential to carry out the administration or to govern the country are directly laid out in the Constitution of India. The other peripheral things which is required, like following the traffic rules, that is not so important. I'm not saying it is not important, so don't go and violate it. Don't tell that in the class it was discussed that they are not part of the Constitution, so therefore I'll not show due respect to what is not there in the Constitution. Those are also important. You can be penalized for not following it. But it is not as important as what is given in the Constitution of India. Is that clear? So what is the Constitution of India? I'm just trying to define it again. What is the Constitution of India? It is a fundamental rule book of the country. And this fundamental rule book gives the most important rules which are required to govern our country. Like the country cannot be governed without a government. Do we have a government? Do we have a government in India? So it is not only that we have a government. The next question is how this government comes. Who will form the government? So that question should also be answered by the Constitution. So can anyone tell me how the government is formed in India? Although the answer comes from the Constitution, do you know the answer how the government is to be formed in India? It should be a democratically elected government. Very good. It should be a democratically elected government. That means the Constitution itself says as to how the government is to be elected. That means basically the government is to be elected by the people of this particular country. That's basically what is called as a democratically elected government. That means the next question comes, how the people are going to elect? So for that the Constitution also says that it will be done through elections. Okay, if it is to done through elections, the next question arises, who will carry out these elections? There has to be some body to carry out these elections. And that body, the Constitution says that the elections will be carried out by the Election Commission of India. How many have heard about the Election Commission of India? So the Election Commission of India will carry out the elections. Okay, all right, the Election Commission of India will carry out the elections. But will the elections will be randomly held or it will be periodically held? So that question is also answered in the Constitution. The Constitution says that the election should be periodically held by the Election Commission of India, normally every 5 years. Now the next question arises, okay, the Election Commission of India is carrying out the elections, and it is carrying out the elections periodically every 5 years. Now who is supposed to vote in the elections? Who will vote in the elections? The people will vote in the elections, and the constitution says the voting rights are based on the principle of universal adult suffrage. When I say universal adult suffrage, that means all those people who got 18 years of age shall have the right to vote. I'm just trying to give some examples. Now, do you understand what the Constitution of India is? It is a fundamental rule book, and this rule book gives all these information which are fundamental, without which the country cannot be governed. That's basically what is a constitution. But the constitution not only deal with these things. Apart from all those things, in fact, the constitution also gives us the information as to what are the multiple institutions that are there in our country. Government is one of the institution. The administration of our country cannot be effectively carried out only by what is called as the government. You need to have multiple institutions which work in coordination with the government, and then only the administration can be carried out smoothly, seamlessly. So, who gives us the information about the various other institutions in our country? It is the Constitution. The Constitution not only gives us information about the various institutions, the Constitution also clarifies as to what are the powers and functions of every institutions in our country. Of course, not all the institutions, the important institutions. As I already said, it is a fundamental rule book. So, it will deal only with the most important institutions. Say, for example, if you go, you may come across a government hospital or a government school. Is that an institution? It is an institution, but that is not so important to be mentioned in the Constitution. But there are few institutions without which the country cannot be governed. So those institutions are largely mentioned in the Constitution itself. So government is one such institution largely. But as I already said, that the administration cannot be carried out only by the government. So you need somebody else to help or work in relation with the government so that they can carry out the administration seamlessly. So what could be the other institutions? There are at least three important institutions apart from, or I would say two important institutions apart from the government, although there are other independent institutions which I'll discuss later. So apart from the government, you have also what is called as legislature and what is called as judiciary. And when I say government, the government represents what is called as executive. So if you see largely under the Constitution, there are three important pillars, three important institutions. Who are they? One is the legislature, the executive, and judiciary. So who gives us the information as to these institutions are there in the which is related to the administration of our country? It is the Constitution. So it is the Constitution which gives all these information. Okay, all right. So based on the fundamental analysis of understanding what is the Constitution, we understood the Constitution is a rule book, and it is this rule book that is help in ruling our country. It gives us information as to how the country is to be governed, who will govern, how the elections are to happen, who will carry out the elections, who is to declare the results of the elections, who can vote in the elections. And apart from that, it also gives us information as to what are all the other institutions apart from the government. So we have learned judiciary and the legislature. What they are supposed to do is also given in the Constitution. I'll just discuss about that also in a little detail, but right now I'll give a brief idea. What is the major function of the legislature? And can you, for the students who are not having any background in polity, I'll just break it down a little easier for you. Can you give me an example of this word legislature? When I say legislature, what does this word legislature denotes? The word legislature denotes what is called as the legislative bodies. The word legislature denotes what is called as the legislative bodies, which means it denotes institutions like parliament. It denotes the institution like state legislature in the states. That is basically what is called as the legislature. So legislature means legislative bodies, executive means government, and then I also told what is called as judiciary. What does it mean by judiciary? The hierarchy of courts in our country. So you have a hierarchy of courts. At the apex you have got the Supreme Court. Below the Supreme Court you have got the high courts in the states. And below the high courts you have got what is called as a subordinate courts. So they are all what is called as a hierarchy of courts. These are the major institutions. I am not saying these are the only institutions, but as of now you try to understand this. So all these informations are given in the constitution. But most importantly, now we are coming to the important point, what the constitution further talks about. So further the constitution also makes it very important that the government which is constituted by the constitution, who is saying as to how the government is to be constituted? It is a constitution. And that constitution itself gives a lot of powers to the government. Do you think that the government today is powerful? Is it powerful or not? It is. So who is going to implement and see whether all the rules are followed or not? It is primarily the government. But at the same time, the constitution wants, though there can be a government where the government will try to implement all those things, but this government should not exercise arbitrary powers. While the government can enforce whatever the laws or the rules in the constitution, but they do not exercise that power arbitrarily. So what do you mean by exercising power arbitrarily? Unchecked, unreasonable, unrestrained. So it is not that you will give the government what is called as unreasonable, unrestrained, unchecked powers, because if that is given to the government, they can misuse it. Therefore, to prevent that, the constitution also puts some limitation upon the powers of what is called as the government. And can you give me an example of how this limitation is put upon the powers of the government? How this limitation is put upon the powers of the government? Okay, judicial review is little advanced. Definitely that is the right answer. I am not saying it is not the right answer, but for the students who have got the understanding of the entire political system, probably you talk of the idea of judicial review. But somebody may not be even aware of what is judicial review in the first place, right? So we should also let them know as to how this arbitrary power of the government is checked is by providing what is called as the fundamental rights. Have you ever heard of the fundamental rights in the constitution? I think most of you might have heard about it. Now, what is the objective of giving fundamental rights to the people? The objective of giving certain rights in the form of what is called as fundamental rights, so that the government cannot arbitrarily take it away. So can anyone tell me of some of the fundamental rights that you are aware of? Any right that you know? Yes. Yes, somebody told right to freedom. Very good. So right to freedom. In fact, Article 19 talks about right to freedom, which gives a set of 6 rights, which we will subsequently discuss. Any of the other fundamental rights? Right to freedom of speech and expression, which is under one of the right under Article 19. Right to equality, right to constitutional remedies, right to freedom of religion, right to education. Anything else? Right to life and personal liberty, right from arbitrary arrest and detention, right against untouchability. So in this way, so on and so forth, a number of rights are there. Now, why I am talking about all those things is, it is not necessary right now we should remember all those things, which we'll discuss one by one as we'll proceed. But the point is, by conferring these rights, the idea is even the state cannot take away these rights arbitrarily from the citizens. Say for example, suppose if the citizens are constantly under the fear of police, that the police can come and arrest anyone without the individual committing a mistake. And if that is done by the police, then probably the police represents the government. So if it is done by the police, then they are probably violating the rights of the people, which the constitution does not allow. So therefore, the constitution, which is a fundamental rule book, is not only saying as to how the country is to be governed, it is not only giving information as to what are the multiple institutions in the constitution under the constitution, but also make sure that the government cannot exercise their power arbitrarily, unreasonably, in an unchecked manner, in an unrestrained manner. And how that is being checked? One major way of checking that is by providing fundamental rights to the people. And if these fundamental rights are violated, then the affected individuals can approach the courts, which we'll subsequently discuss how they can approach the courts and what is the remedy that is available. Therefore, now coming to the larger picture, based on whatever I discussed, now can you understand as to what is the Constitution of India? The Constitution is nothing but the fundamental rule book, and it is this fundamental rule book based on which the government is established. It is this fundamental rule book based on which the elections are conducted. It is this fundamental rule book based on which various institutions function in coordination with one another. It is this fundamental rule book which also says as to what is the limitation upon the powers of the state. So all these things are coming from the Constitution of India. That is why I say that is the fundamental rule book of our country. But again, I am sticking to the word fundamental rule book. Why? Because I said apart from the fundamental rules, there is a lot of other rules based on which the country is governed. Say for example, somebody talk about the traffic rules. Is there a traffic rule in our country? Can you think of any of the other rules apart from the traffic rules, which you think you are following it but not part of the constitution? Very good. Property registration, or let us assume paying taxes. When you buy a property, probably you'll have to pay some registration fee and other forms of taxes, or in general paying taxes. How many of you are paying taxes in this class? May not be, because you're not making any income, probably you are still in your student phase. But probably once you'll start earning, then you need to pay taxes also, according to your own liability, according to your own tax slab, according to your own income. You may have the liability. But paying taxes is not part of the fundamental rule book. It is not there directly mentioned in the constitution. But however, that rule is also there in our country. So why I am stressing this is, the constitution is not the only rule book based on which the country is governed. We may have a lot of other rules. But however, given all the rules, which is so fundamental and which is so important, it is the constitution. And the other rules are only subordinated to what is called as the fundamental rule book. So therefore, the other rules shall not be in violation to what is given in the constitution. So for example, the government may ask you to pay income tax. The government may tell you to follow the traffic rules. But none of these rules should clash with what is given what? None of these rules can clash with what is given in the Constitution of India. So all those are only secondary in nature, and they are subordinated to what is called as the rules that is given in the Constitution. Is that clear? So this is a basic idea you should have as to what is the Constitution of India. This Constitution of India came into force on 26 January 1950. And it kept on expanding, it kept on expanding, it kept on expanding. It will expand in the future also. When I say it will expand in the future, that means the constitution can go for what is called as amendment. Or in other words, the constitution is also what is called as a living document. As an individual, a living individual will go for a change. So similarly, the constitution may also go for a change. And that changes to the constitution happens by way of what is called as amendment to the Constitution of India. So henceforth, if I use the word amendment, it basically refers to what? Changes to the constitution. Starting in 1950, today we are in 2025. So that means I think almost 75 years after the constitution came into force. Can anyone tell me how many times the constitution has gone for a change in the last 75 years? 100 and who said that? 107? Okay, 107, 108. 108. Who said that? 108 times. And where did you get that? Where did you listen to this 107, 108? I just want to know. Even if it is wrong, nothing to worry. I just want to know. Where did you get this idea of 107, 106, 108? Somebody told. Why I'm asking this question is, till now the amendment that has happened to the Constitution of India is 106. So usually in all my batches I've heard that the students usually used to tell it low. They're not updated to the latest amendment. But for the first time from this particular batch, I'm hearing the answer that you are saying more than the amendment that has happened to the Constitution of India. So the latest amendment that has happened in 2024, it was given assent by the President of India, is the 106th Constitutional Amendment Act. And do you know what is this 106th Constitutional Amendment Act is about? Very good. It is about expanding women's reservation, which I'll subsequently discuss as to what is this women's reservation and all those things. You don't have to worry about it. But right now, the only thing that you should be aware of, what is amendment? Amendment means what? Amendment means changes to the constitution. And it's not a very easy process, in fact. It's not a very difficult process also, but it is of course not a easy process. We'll also try to understand as we'll proceed how the constitution can be amended, who has the power to do that, and all those things as we'll proceed. But right now, the basic understanding is you should have an idea as to what is the constitution. And the constitution is a living document. So therefore, it can go for a change. So the second important thing, if you have understood as to what is a constitution, the second important thing that you should realize is that every state will have their own constitution. When I say state, don't confuse with the various states in our country. Normally in political science, when I use the word state, it is a nation state. That means India is a state. All right. So, but when I take up the center-state relationship, I will also use the word state. At the time, it is independent individual states in our country. But as of now, when I use the word state, it refers to what is called as a nation state. Now, every state might have their own constitution. And the constitution of every country reflects their own ideological, historical, philosophical views. So, similarly, India also has its own constitution. So, it also reflects our tradition, our culture, the struggle that you have undergone under the Britishers. So all those things might reflect in the Constitution of India. However, I said that every nation state will have what is called as its own constitution. So therefore, it also becomes important for us to understand as to what is a state. That means politically, how do you define a state? So as per the political scientists, there are 4 essential features to define as to what is a state. Now, why I am discussing this is because sometimes such questions are also asked in the prelims examination. May not be in your mains, but in the prelims examination. So, let me also discuss you very quickly as to what you understand by a state. So, when you consider a particular thing as a state or a nation state, it should have 4 important characteristics. Can you guess me what shall be the characteristics of a nation state? First of all, it should have its own set of people who may be considered to be the citizens of that particular nation state. Is it mandatory that a state should have its own people? Yes. Who may be conferred the citizenship, and by conferring the citizenship, they may exercise various rights under the constitution, and at the same time, they also owe allegiance to the state as a citizen. Okay, so they should have their own people. Do you think that they should also have their own territory? Yes. They should have their own territory, border has to be there. So they should have their own territory, they should have their own people. What else do you think they should have? They should also have their own government. Not necessarily a democratic government, that is what is very important. It can be any form of government. But they should have a government. So don't have this misunderstanding today across all the countries in the world, they're all democratic countries. May not be. Can you give me examples of countries which are considered to be nation states, which fulfill all these characteristics? There's of course one more characteristics I'll discuss, but may not be a democratic state. Very good. Saudi Arabia is not a democratic state. Can you give me more examples? No, China's constitution is a democratic constitution. See, China, if you say that it is not democratic, that is not a right view. But the basic criticism is a one-party state. There is only one party which will contest election, and there is only one party from where the people will or the government will be formed. So therefore, the kind of competition that we have in India may not be there, or the kind of dissent that we may have in India or in other democratic countries may not be there, because we basically follow what is called as a multi-party system. And to that extent, if you say United States of America, which is considered to be one of the most democratic country in the world, they also follow two-party system, and their tradition is more than 250 years, where they follow two-party system. But the two-party system is having a lot of democratic credentials, so we are calling them as one of the most important democracy in the world. But definitely the constitution of China says it's a democratic constitution, because there are elections that is happening periodically and they are electing the government. But can you just think of some other examples? Saudi Arabia is definitely the right answer. And there can be a lot of other states in the Middle East as well, which may not be completely democratic. But I am looking for some authoritarian states. Very good. North Korea. So North Korea, you don't even know what is happening. Definitely the elections are not happening. But apart from that, from the outside, we do not know what is happening in North Korea in the first place. In fact, they don't even allow the internet there. The state regulates as to what the people can watch. The state regulates as to what people has to eat. So these kind of restrictions does exist in North Korea. So it is definitely not what is called as a democratic state. So the point that I'm trying to stress is, when I say a nation state need not be a democratic state, but they should have their own form of government, whatever is recognized by their constitution. So the kind of government in North Korea may be recognized by the respective constitution. So we are nobody to question. Although if democracy is there, it is good for the people of that particular country. But we are nobody to question as to what kind of questions they should have. So it is the people who have to decide as to what kind of constitution they should have. All right. So yes, so you have a people, you have a territory, you have a government, and what else is required? You should have a sovereign authority. Sovereign authority means a supreme authority. There should be supreme authority in that state. Now, who is the supreme authority in India? Say, for example, does India fall under the definition of state as a nation state? So, we do have our own people, citizens. Do you have our own territory? So, how do you know that we have a territory? We have well-defined borders. How do you know that we have well-defined borders? Because somebody is saying that we have well-defined borders. Then if you have well-defined borders, why there are border disputes that is happening? Okay, so that's a different thing. Even when we have well-defined border, if somebody is making an incursion, there is a possibility of dispute. Let us not discuss about this right now. But how do you know that we have a well-defined border? So you have seen the map. So based on which you are saying. Okay, now the question is, where does the map come from? So the map of India is based on what the Constitution says. So because all these things comes from the Constitution of India. It is the Constitution of India that talks about the territory of India, which you later understand when I get into the Constitution. So that is why I said that the Constitution is a fundamental rule book. And similarly, when I say that the state should have its people, and that means I said that the state should have its own citizens. So then how do we know who are the citizens of India? Again, the Constitution says who are the citizens of India. We'll try to understand that as we'll proceed. And how many of you are sure that you are a citizen of India? All of you are sure? Definitely. You should be sure. It is important because if you're not a citizen of India, you're not allowed to appear for this examination. So make sure that you are a citizen of India. After years of preparation, then if you're not a citizen of India, then you will not be issued the appointment at the later stages. But I'm sure that you're all citizen of India. But if I go a step further and ask you, how do you prove your citizenship? The nationality documents. What type of documents? Certificate of nationality. What is a certificate of nationality? Actually, there is no need for any document to prove the citizenship. See, whenever it comes under dispute, you'll have to prove the citizenship. Otherwise, there's nothing called as nationality document. We do not have any card which is issued by the government of India saying that he or she is a citizen of India. That has to be proved only when it is disputed. But however, my question is, how would you prove when it is disputed? Let us assume a hypothetical case that in case if it is disputed, probably you'll have to prove your citizenship to receive all the rights. Otherwise, you may not get all the rights that the Constitution gives, because some of the rights under the Constitution is not available to the aliens. Alien means not the alien species. Don't think like that. Alien is someone who is not an Indian citizen. Alien means the word, when I use the word alien, it refers to a foreigner. So now if somebody disputes your citizenship, and which is very important for you to prove your citizenship, how do you prove your citizenship? By birth? That means you are saying that you are born in India, so therefore you are an Indian citizen. Some of them, okay, I am a little happy in this class because nobody said that I have an Aadhaar card, which I'll prove that I'm a citizen of India. Because understand that Aadhaar card is not a proof of citizenship. Any resident in India can have an Aadhaar card. Any resident, when I say resident, a temporary residents, even if they stay 6 months in India, they're eligible to apply for an Aadhaar card. That does not make them a citizen. Okay, what else proof you can show that to prove that you are a citizen? Although not relevant to the topic I'm discussing, but I just want to see the kind of understanding I've got.
So if both of our parents are Indian, if both of the parents are Indian, one is by residence also after a certain number of years.
What about when you have a passport? Does it prove your citizenship? If you have a passport, if you have voter ID, let us assume you have a passport, you have a voter ID. Does it prove your citizenship? It does. Because the passport will be issued by the government of India only to the Indian citizen. Only an Indian citizen can own an Indian passport. They will not issue a passport to a foreigner. And similarly, let us assume that the voter ID card is issued only to the Indian citizens, not to the foreigners, because as per the Constitution, only the Indian citizens will be eligible to vote in the elections. Therefore, it does. They are all proof of your citizenship. But again, the question is not answered. When somebody disputes your citizenship, that means they may dispute these cards also. They may say that you have fraudulently taken these cards. So therefore, merely having them doesn't mean that your citizenship is proved. Or in other words, I can say that you are possessing these cards because it is assumed by law you are an Indian citizen. Because you are a citizen in the first place, these cards were issued. But now your citizenship itself is disputed. So in that case, you cannot merely say that I have these cards. Because if you don't prove your citizenship still, these cards may be taken back by the state. So we will subsequently discuss. Okay, so right now I'm not going to that particular area, but if you want, you can just think about all those things, which I'll discuss because we have a separate part in the constitution which discusses about the citizenship. So then I'll discuss about. So the point here is, to fall within the definition of state, you should have what is called their own people, citizen. They should have a territory. So the point that I'm trying to stress is, we have our own people because the constitution tried to define who are citizens. The constitution says what is the territory of India. So we have a territory also. We do have a government also. And what type of government we have got? We have got a democratic government. But different state may have a different forms of government. That is not an issue. We have a democratic government. And then we also have a sovereign authority. And who is a sovereign authority in our country? Who is a sovereign authority? It is the people who are the sovereign authority, but expressed through the Constitution of India. So who is ultimate sovereign authority in our country? It is a people, but expressed through the Constitution of India. So if you read the preamble says, we the people of India having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign state. So while the expression is reflected through the Constitution, but the ultimate power and authority lies with whom? It is through the people of our country. So do we fall within the definition of state? Yes, we do fall within the definition of what is called as state. So these four things has to satisfy, very important. I'll solve some previous year questions also as I'll proceed. So is your understanding of what is a constitution, is your understanding of what is a state, that is political science definition of state, is that clear? Okay, so moving forward, we'll move to the next thing. That is, it is not necessary that every state which is having a constitution, because now you understood a nation state, you have understood constitution, and every nation state will have its own constitution, based on which that particular country will be governed. So it is not necessary every country that has a constitution, there will be constitutionalism. So having a constitution is not a necessity that there will be constitutionalism. So therefore, you should understand the word what is constitutionalism. How many of you heard about this word constitutionalism? Okay, some of you with the background they heard, but for others, please listen. All of you listen, in fact. Now, what do you understand by the word constitutionalism? So constitutionalism means whatever is there in the constitution, whatever is the rules that is laid down in the constitution, and if those rules are followed in letter and spirit. If it is just in letter in the constitution but not followed in spirit, then that does not reflect the idea of what is called as constitutionalism. Now, when those provisions are followed in letter and spirit, then we can say that there is what is called as constitutionalism. Is that clear? For example, does the constitution provides for what is called as fundamental rights? And does the fundamental right protect the people from arbitrary exercise of power? Suppose if the constitution provides for fundamental rights, but if the citizens are not exercising that, they are not able to exercise the liberty and freedom that is given under the constitution, then you cannot say that there is what is called as constitutionalism, though there is a constitution. And how many of you think that the fundamental rights are protected in our country? How many of you think that no, it is only given in the constitution, but it is not happening in reality? Do you think largely the fundamental rights are protected? There can be minor aberrations that can happen in any country, but largely we do follow the principles of what is called as laid in the constitution. So therefore, we can say what is called as constitutionalism does exist. But however, try to understand, having a constitution in itself will not make sure that there is constitutionalism. Constitutionalism will prevail only when whatever is laid down in the constitution is followed in letter and spirit. That is what is very important. So therefore, to say constitutionalism is there or not, one important thing is whatever is there in the constitution should be followed. That means I already said that we do have a fundamental rights, and what is the larger objective of this fundamental rights in the constitution is to limit the powers of the state. So whose power they wanted to limit? They wanted the state not to function arbitrarily. So therefore, the very idea of the constitutionalism, the very idea of the constitution or the idea of constitutionalism is to limit the powers of the state. So for the concept of constitutionalism, when you say constitutionalism, you'll have to be very clear that it comes with an idea of what is called as limited state. And if that is happening, then only you can say that there exists what is called as constitutionalism. Is that clear? Alright, so we have understood three keywords. We have understood what is a constitution. We understood second thing as what is a state. And then we understood as to what is a constitutionalism. Now I just wanted you to go through some of the questions that was asked in UPSC. So based on whatever I discuss. So whenever I discuss certain areas, if I want to do some questions, I'll also make you to solve those questions. So look into this particular thing. In fact, this is a previous year question. So can anyone answer this question? Yes, can anyone tell me the answer? Not able to see it? None of you are able to see it? Okay, I'll just read the question. A constitutional government means statement a representative government of a nation with federal structure, a government whose head enjoys nominal powers, a government whose head enjoys real powers, a government limited by the terms of the constitution. What is the answer? It is D. So what is a constitutional government? A constitutional government definitely means a government which is limited by what? Limited by the terms of the constitution. And if that is followed, then only you can say that there exists what is called as constitutionalism. Alright, so this is very, very important. Which one of the following best defines the term state? Which one of the following best defines the term state? Is it visible? This is a very important question. You just try to solve this question. Let me see how many of you are able to get this answer right. You can just rearrange yourself in a way that you can watch these questions. Is it visible from there? I think you can come this side, or maybe that side. Which one of the following best defines the term state? How many of you think A? Okay, let us see. Anyone who thinks otherwise? D? Anyone who thinks apart from A and D? So you should see which best explains. So the question itself saying which of the following best explains, best defines. So sometimes there could be multiple right answers. But among that, the most appropriate should be your answer. So let us try to see which of the following best explains. And what we learned about what is a state? It should have a community of persons. So community of persons means, is there people? If you have any counterpoints, you can just say. If you feel that why it should not be considered. Okay, so here when you talk of community of people, do you have people? And in fact, permanently occupying, community of people who are permanently there. So you can say that they are the citizens. Occupying a definite territory, territory is there. Independent of external control. Sovereign. Okay, I didn't explain the concept of sovereign when I discussed. So very briefly for the students who may not know it. So sovereign means they are the supreme authority. They are the highest authority. And when I say they are the highest authority, they are not under pressure from any of the other external factors. So do you think today India is a sovereign state? Can other countries dictate terms to India as to what they are supposed to do? Internally as well as externally. What shall happen within India? It is a matter of India, not the other countries. And kind of external conduct India might have. Say, for example, India can decide with whom it wanted to have friendly relations. India can decide as to what type of trade relations it want to have with which country. Now, all those things will be decided by India itself. So, to that extent, if you see it is independent of external control, does it mean that it also reflects the idea of sovereignty? Yes. Possessing an organized government. Does it reflect the idea of what is called as government? Yes. So can you say A is the right answer? Yes. The best option is A. I do not know what the other things, but other things does not reflect the idea of what A reflects. Let us take the example of B. A politically organized people of a definite territory. Even let us assume, okay, a politically organized people, let us assume that it is not as clear as the previous one. Even let us assume that there is a group of people, definite territory, and possessing an authority to govern them, maintain law and order, protect their natural rights, and safeguard their means of sustenance. So it does give us an idea of what is called as that there is an authority to govern. Yes, it does have a government, but what is missing in this? The idea of sovereignty is not as explicit as it is in the first case. So you should see what best explains. So what is the right answer here? It is only option A. A is the right answer, and in fact UPSC also given this A. So sometimes they may ask you such question. Okay, so this is also very important. So three things we have seen. We have understood as to what? Understood as to what is a constitution. We understood as to what is or how do we define a state, and we also understood the concept of what is called as constitutionalism. Is that clear? And in fact, I said that every nation state will have their own constitution. And if those constitutions are implemented in letter and spirit, then we can also say that there is what is called as constitutionalism. So therefore, before proceeding further, I also wanted you to introduce to a particular concept of what is called as a written constitution and an unwritten constitution. Because not every country across the world may have what is called as a written constitution. Some of the countries can continue with what is called as an unwritten constitution. So there is a difference between the expression written and unwritten constitution. So please write down the next thing, that is the written and the unwritten constitution. Okay, what type of constitution India has? How many of you are sure? No doubt you should have, because India is having the lengthiest written constitution in the world. Of all the written constitution, which is the lengthiest constitution? It is the Constitution of India. But not every country across the world, they do exercise what is called as a written constitution. Some of the constitution will also be what is called as unwritten constitution. So what is the distinction between a written and an unwritten constitution? So can anyone tell me what is the basic understanding when you read of what is called as a written and an unwritten constitution? So what do you understand by something which is called as a written constitution? Only one single book. What if it is more than one single book but still codified? So is it, what is mandatory here? The codification is mandatory or it should be codified into one single document? Say for example, you are attending the polity lectures, let us assume. You are attending the class here, let us assume the authentic notes you are taking. And after one notebook is over, but the lecture is not still over. So you are again making authentic notes, attending the lecture in the second notebook. So will you say that only the first notebook, because I started first, that is the constitution and not the second one? That is not the case, right? So it is not about one single document when you talk of what is called as a codified constitution, but rather when you talk of written constitution, but rather what is important is whether the constitution is codified or not. It can be codified in one single document, it can be more than one single document, not necessarily one single document, but it shall be codified in nature. That is what is very, very important. So when you talk of what is called as written constitution. But however, yes, most of the constitution are codified into one single document, but that is not the sufficient condition. It can be more than one document also, but what is the necessary condition is that it is codified in nature. So codified means it is written down. That is basically what is called as codification. Okay, now the most important thing that you'll have to understand when I talk of the written constitution, apart from the constitution, so I said it is codified. It is codified into one single or more than one document also, but the key word is it is codified, it is written down. And how do we define the Constitution of India? Can you recollect how do we define the Constitution? It is a fundamental rule book based on which a country is governed. But we also discussed it is not just the Constitution based on which a country is governed. We have other rules also based on which the country is governed. Do we have other rules? Yes. So what are the other rules based on which a country is governed? Can you give me some examples? Rules which is there to govern our country, but that is not part of the Constitution. Judicial judgments. Let us not talk about the judgments right now. It may be right, may not be right, depending upon what type of judicial judgments. So let us not get into that right now. But can you give me some examples? Say for example, we spoke about the traffic rules. And these traffic rules are part of what is called as Motor Vehicle Act. So this traffic rules, which is part of what is called as Motor Vehicle Act, that is not there in the Constitution. So therefore, it is not what is called as part of the Constitution. So in that way, can you think of other rules or other laws which is not part of the Constitution? I also gave one more example of the Income Tax Act. The Income Tax Act is not part of the Constitution, but that is also a rule that we implement, but that is not part of the Constitution. The Indian Penal Code, which has been renamed today, Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita. That is not part of the Constitution, which is the major criminal law in our country. That is not mentioned in the Constitution. In that way, can you think of the other laws? Any other couple of laws? How many have heard about Right to Information Act? I heard of this? Right to Information Act. How many have heard about Indian Evidence Act, which has also been renamed, I think, presently? How many have heard about Citizenship Amendment Act? Now, these are all there in the newspaper. How many have heard about the Consumer Redressal Act? Okay. All right. So, this is also an act which is there. So, in this way, there are a number of laws, number of rules, to put it very simply, in our country, but they are not part of the Constitution. They are also used in the administration of the country, but they are not as important as that of the Constitution. And these laws or these rules are only subordinated to what is given in the constitution. So therefore, one important thing that you should understand when I talk of written constitution, and wherever there's a written constitution, what we understood that the constitution is codified. It can be one document or more than one document, but the constitution is codified. And whatever is written in that particular document only constitutes the constitution. But apart from that, there can be number of other rules and laws. They do not constitute what is called as the constitution. Therefore, whenever I say that there is a written constitution, it is not only that it is codified becomes very important. The second important difference that you should also understand is that there is a distinction between what is called as constitutional law versus what is called as the ordinary law. Both the type of law exist where there is a written constitution. In a country which is having a written constitution, there will be constitutional law, and there is something which is called as ordinary law. Now, what do you understand by constitutional law? Constitutional law deals with the provisions in the constitution, whatever is written down in the constitution, and it also includes those provisions as interpreted by the Supreme Court of India. Because who is the final interpreter of the Constitution of India? It is the Supreme Court. So therefore, whatever judgments that the Supreme Court gives related to provisions in the Constitution, the Supreme Court may pass number of judgments, but not everything related to the Constitution. So whatever judgments the Supreme Court pass related to the provisions of the Constitution, and whatever is the other provisions in the Constitution, the interpretation of all those things will be considered to be what is called as constitutional law. But apart from whatever is not there in the Constitution, there are also laws, and they are considered to be what? They are considered to be ordinary laws. Now, can you give me examples of ordinary laws in our country? What are all the examples of ordinary laws? We have discussed what is outside the Constitution. They are all ordinary laws. I said they are ordinary rules or rules outside the Constitution. So, they are all called as ordinary laws. Can you give me an example of that? Whatever we discussed. Yes, we have the Income Tax Act. And then the Information Technology Act is there. That is also there. So, here when I say Income Tax Act, it is 1861. When I say the Information Technology Act, it came in there 2000. Anyways, these are all ordinary laws. Then you have Penal Code, the Citizenship Act, Evidence Act. These are all what is called as ordinary laws. And what do you mean by constitutional law? Whatever is a provision in the Constitution. Can you give me some examples of constitutional laws? Say, for example, provisions related to fundamental rights, judgments passed by the Supreme Court on fundamental rights. These are all considered to be what is called as constitutional law. But between both the things, which is superior? It is a constitutional law. So, wherever there is a written constitution, there exists this distinction as to whether it is a constitutional law or whether it is an ordinary law. And between these two things, what is superior in nature? It is the constitutional law. Is that clear? So, yes, in a written constitution, things are codified first. And in a written constitution, there exists a distinction of what is called as constitutional law and what is called as ordinary law. And the third important feature of a written constitution is to what extent the constitution can be amended. Because the constitution is codified and written down, if at all you have to make changes, you have to make changes in the written form. So, can the constitution be amended in a written constitution? Yes. Especially the Constitution of India, which is a written constitution, it can be amended. And in general, you can use this as a thumb rule, a general principle, not specific to the Indian Constitution. Any written constitution is more rigid in character. When I say rigid in character, that means it is not easy to make changes. I am not saying it is not possible at all. So, you should not have the meaning it is impossible, but rather it is not easy to make changes. So, therefore, one of the important characteristics is when you have to amend or make changes, it is rigid in character. So, rigid to the extent what? That the process of making the change is not going to be easy. But it does not mean that it cannot be changed at all. So for example, how many times the Constitution of India has been amended? 106 times. So therefore, you will understand that it is not very easy also, it is not very difficult also. In fact, that is why in India, I am not saying that it is in specific to India. In general, I am talking that it is rigid. But the Indian Constitution has a unique feature, that it is a combination of rigidity as well as flexibility. But in general, the written constitutions are rigid. For example, the American Constitution, which has got a history of 250 years, do you know how many times it has been amended? 3 times? No, it has been amended more than that. Very less. It has been amended 27 times till this point of time. That means approximately in a decade they have done one amendment. So that's a classic example of very rigid constitution. It's not very easy to make changes to the American Constitution because the procedure to make those changes are very complex, which is also laid down in the Constitution. Alright, so on the contrary, we'll come to unwritten Constitution. So now how do you differentiate? You just have to differentiate. So when you come to unwritten Constitution, what do you consider to be an unwritten Constitution? It is not codified in nature. So when I say codified, we have seen that it is written down. So what does it mean by when I say it is uncodified? Uncodified means it is not written down. So that's a basic misunderstanding of the students. This is the biggest misunderstanding of the students when we try to understand as to what is called as an unwritten constitution. We understand because the written constitution is codified, an unwritten constitution is not written down anywhere. No. Without writing down something, it is very difficult to run a country. How can you run a country without having written something? And what if the dispute arises? So it does not mean that the constitution is not written down. There also it is codified. But it is generally considered as uncodified because it is not codified into a single document or multiple documents. Say for example, when you take off the Indian Constitution, how many documents we have as the Constitution of India? 1, 2, 3. Any idea how many documents? How many of you think only one? Sure, only one document? Yes, in case of India, only one document. So the example of written constitution here I can give is what is called as a Constitution of India. But UK or United Kingdom, so it is an example of what is called as an unwritten constitution. How many documents do they have as the Constitution of United Kingdom? Can anyone tell me? Any idea? We do not know because there is no restriction on the number of documents they can have. That means try to understand, when I say an unwritten constitution, this is very important. Please listen to me for a moment. When I say it is an unwritten constitution, an unwritten constitution does not mean it is uncodified. It only means uncodified to the extent. So what is the meaning of this uncodified? You'll have to understand. When I say that the unwritten constitution are not codified, in the sense that the constitution of a particular country which is having an unwritten constitution is not codified into specific number of documents. It can be 1 document, 2 document or 3 document, that specification is not there. Or in other words, whatever rules that they have, whatever laws that they have, that becomes part of their constitution. There is no ending to what their constitution is. To make it very clear, so for example, in India, we have a distinction between what is called as a constitutional law and an ordinary law. Whatever is written down in that single document, which is the Constitution of India, is a constitutional law. Outside that particular document, we are discussing the Information Technology Act, the Income Tax Act, the Indian Penal Code, the Indian Evidence Act. They are all what type of law? They are all ordinary laws because they are written. They are also written, but outside the Constitution of India. So in a written constitution, there exists a distinction between a written and an unwritten constitution. But whereas in an unwritten constitution, there is no such distinction. There is no such distinction as to what is called as a constitutional law or an ordinary law. Any law that is enacted by their parliament, any customs they have got. Sometimes it may be completely unwritten also. Any customs they have got, any judgments that is given by the courts, all become part of their constitutions. Any long-standing traditions and conventions, they may also be part of the constitution. Is that clear? So all these things are part of the constitution. So the basic thing is, to what extent you should understand when I say they are uncodified. They are uncodified doesn't mean that they are not codified. They are uncodified to the extent they are not codified into a single document. Is that clear? And there is no distinction between as to what is called as a constitutional law and what is called as an ordinary law. Is that clear? No distinction. Is that clear to all of you? Is that clear to all of you? Anybody has a doubt? No. Distinction between what is a constitutional law and an ordinary law. Whenever the changes are to happen to this constitution, it had happened very easily. It's so flexible in nature that, because the very idea of keeping the amendment very difficult in a written constitution is that to amend the constitution it is difficult, but to make changes to the ordinary law it is easy. But here there is no distinction between as to what is a constitutional law and an ordinary law, so everything can be amended easily. Therefore, you can understand that all unwritten constitutions are in general how? They are flexible in nature. Is that clear? The distinction between written and unwritten constitution. The example for a written constitution, you can write Indian Constitution, American Constitution, they are all examples. For an unwritten constitution, you can write UK, Israel, they are all examples of unwritten constitutions. Is it clear to all of you? The distinction between written and an unwritten constitution. If all these things are clear, then we'll move to the next part. That's basically what is called as democracy. So now we'll have an understanding of certain keywords. See, for 2-3 classes, it will be like this. I wanted you to give the basic details about the polity before we get into the constitution. So the idea is all the students are in a level playing field. Even the students who have done masters in political science and all those things, they may be aware of all these basic terms. But the moment we enter into the constitution, they also have a lot of things to learn. But the problem is, without knowing these basic things, especially for the students who are not having any background, they will not be able to catch everything that I say in the later stages. So first 2-3 classes, I'll only deal with all the basic key terms so that you have an understanding of the subject. And then we'll move to the historical background and all those things. And then the subject will start from the topic of preamble, which will take at least 3-4 classes to go to what is called as a preamble. So you have a basic idea. All right, so come to the next topic, that is the salient features of the Indian Constitution. So I want to discuss some of the salient features. Okay. So far clear, offline students? Any doubt? All right. So one important thing is how many of you are focusing on prelims 2026? Prelims 2026. To make your preparation easier, it's very important that you'll have to following what is happening in the class. When I say that whatever you learned in the class, take half an hour to 1 hour to go home and revise it. And if you do that on a regular basis, preparation becomes so easier. But if you listen to the class and say, let us say for 1 month you don't revise anything, most of the things that I discuss in the class might look very new to you. You may not be able to correlate even with your own notes. So that is complicating the process of preparation. And how do you revise? Today you go home and you revise what has happened in the class. So tomorrow you attend the class number 2. So there, before revising the class number 2, 5-10 minutes you will revise class number 1. Then you go to class number 2. So therefore the continuity continues. Then when you come to class number 3, you revise both class number 1 and class number 2. It will hardly take 1 or 2 minutes for class number 1, maybe 5 minutes for class number 2. And then class number 3, you'll have to give the fresh time. So over a period of time, you'll just turn pages because you have done multiple revisions. You'll just have an aerial view and you'll be able to turn the pages. You will just look at it only when you're not able to have the idea, so that you will refer. So if you do like this, the revision becomes very, very easier. Okay. So this is how we'll have to do, not only for the polity. Whenever any subject goes in foundation, this is the way you'll have to go. So it becomes very easy for you to prepare. And if you do like that, then your chances are bright in the very first attempt itself. Then otherwise, yes, it is not that, because everybody path is different in the examination, because you cannot just follow the path of others. You should have your own path to succeed, but it will become little easier. Okay. Okay, so there's a question from one of the students, sir, what is the difference between an ordinary law and a constitutional law? So can any offline student explain this? I'll also explain it, but can anyone explain based on your understanding? What is the difference between a constitutional law and an ordinary law? So any law means basically any rules, any provisions that is mentioned in the constitution is a constitutional law, or the interpretation of those provisions by the courts can also be considered to be what is called as a constitutional law. Is that clear? So this is basically what is called as the constitutional law. Whatever the provision directly mentioned or the interpretation of those provisions. Say for example, fundamental rights. Is it part of constitutional law? Yes. If an interpretation is given by the Supreme Court of those fundamental rights, can that be considered to be a constitutional law? Yes. Tomorrow let us assume the Supreme Court gives a judgment on the Income Tax Act. Will that be considered to be a constitutional law? No, that is part of ordinary law. So whatever is there in the constitution, those provisions and the interpretation of those provisions would amount to only what is called as, will amount to what is called as constitutional law. Anything outside this framework, because I said we have a number of other laws as well. Anything outside this particular framework would be considered to be what is called as an ordinary law. Is that clear? That is in case of a written constitution. But whereas in a case of an unwritten constitution, this distinction does not exist in the first place. Therefore, everything is part of their what is called as their constitution. And because everything is part of their constitution, it also becomes easier. In India, it is difficult to amend the constitution, but it is easier to amend the ordinary laws. So therefore, that difference is there. But whereas in an unwritten constitution, the distinction between ordinary law and the constitutional law does not exist. Therefore, everything can be amended easily. Is that clear? Later, I will explain this phrase number of times. There's a phrase that is given by a political scientist in United Kingdom, and United Kingdom has what is called as an unwritten constitution. And this was said by the political scientists, the Parliament of United Kingdom can do anything except changing a man into a woman and a woman into a man. So if at all there is a restriction upon the powers of the Parliament of United Kingdom, is what they cannot do. They cannot change a man into a woman and a woman into a man. But otherwise they have got all the powers, which is little different from the kind of system in India, because in India, what is supreme? In India, the supreme authority is the constitution expressed by the will of the people, or it is the sovereign authority is the people, but they have drafted the constitution. But in UK, later I will proceed, you will understand, because they have got an unwritten constitution, their constitution is not the supreme thing. Rather, they are based on the principle of parliamentary sovereignty. So who is considered to be sovereign there? It is the parliament. Alright, so this is a little advanced concept. Don't worry about this. So just to give an example, I have told that I'll discuss that at the later stage. Okay, so don't get confused. Okay. Now let us take the very basic things, then we'll move to the other areas. So some of the salient features means that these are all the important features in the constitution. That is the Constitution of India. It is not that we'll be able to see all the features in one single day, that is not possible. But in the next 2-3 classes, I'll take you through some of the important features so that you are familiar about these important features. And one such feature is what is called as democracy. And do you agree that democracy is one of the significant features of the Indian Constitution? Is the Indian state a democratic state? How many of you agree with that? India is a democracy because the Constitution says that India should be a democracy. So based on which the country can be governed. So we should understand the meaning of this word democracy. So can anyone tell me as to what do you understand by democracy in a very simple manner? Democracy means what? Rule by people. So ultimately there is a government to rule, but that government will be decided by whom? People. So democracy basically means rule by people. Today a number of constitutions across the world, they do follow this particular principle of democracy, that is rule by people. But even if you see democracy, when you talk of the idea of rule by people, so democracy we understand it is basically rule by people. Even when you understand the concept of rule by people, further it can be divided into what is called as direct rule by people and indirect rule by people. So you'll have to further break it down as to what kind of democracy does the Constitution of India provides for. Whether it is a direct democracy or it is an indirect democracy. So what do you think? What type of democracy does the Constitution of India provides for? Indirect democracy and not direct democracy. In fact, in the modern era, most of the democracies across the world, they are all indirect democracies. Or in other words, we can also say that to be what is called as representative democracy. Indirect democracy or what is called as representative democracy. See, democracy basically means it is ruled by people. That means people have to directly rule. You and me as the people of India, we should rule. But is it possible for all of us to rule? If we all of us rule, then it becomes a very complex process. Instead of rule, there will be an anarchy. So that's the reason the members of the Constituent Assembly, when I say members of the Constituent Assembly, they are the founding fathers of the Indian Constitution. They decided that India would continue to be a democracy. That means ultimate authority will be the people, but it will not be a direct democracy. Instead of direct democracy, it will be an indirect democracy. When I say indirect democracy, that they will elect a limited number of representatives. That means people will elect their representatives, and once the people elect the representatives, people will transfer the power to these elected representatives. And on behalf of the people, who will rule the country? These elected representatives will rule the country. That's basically what is called as indirect democracy. And in fact, most of the countries today, they follow the principle of indirect democracy. In the modern era, there is no complete direct democracy. Although in some of the countries, certain elements of direct democracy, even they are not completely direct democracy, certain tools of direct democracies are used. So you don't have to worry about it because we are primarily concerned about the Constitution of India. So therefore, we will only talk of the kind of democracy in our country. So this representative democracy is what we follow. And can anyone tell me who are these representatives? Because I said in the kind of democracy in India, people elect their representatives. So who are these representatives? Yes, in India I am asking. Very good, it is the MPs and the MLAs, that is the members of the parliament at the union level and the members of the state legislature at the state level. Anybody from the state of Uttar Pradesh? No one? Delhi? Delhi. In Delhi, there's an election to the Legislative Assembly. Although Delhi is a little different because Delhi is not a full-fledged state. It's a union territory with a special status. But yes, Someone from the other states? Karnataka. So, you are from Karnataka. Does the election happens in Karnataka? Yes, people do elect their representatives. Yes, they elect the MLAs. And whether you are part of Karnataka, you can vote to the legislative assembly elections also, you can vote to the Lok Sabha elections also, when the Lok Sabha election comes. So, do you also vote to elect the MP? Yes, when the election happens. So, they are basically the representatives. Okay. So, it is the MPs at the national level, members of parliament at the national level, and the MLAs at the state level. But there are certain things further you will have to understand. And as I already said, not everything could be understood in a single day. So, students who have got the idea, they may still feel that there are some classification in the MPs and all those things. But if I start explaining all those things, the new students will start panicking. So, generally understand that there are MPs and the MLAs. Alright. So, they elect the representatives, and from these representatives, what is happening? Even these representatives will not directly rule. Now, try to understand in a democracy. So, although we say that it is the representatives, from these representatives, the government will be formed. It is not that the MPs will rule the country. So, do you think that the MPs today rule the country? No. But from these MPs, at the union level, let us assume, a government will be formed. A smaller size of these MPs. A government will be formed, and that government will rule the country. Is that clear? So, this is how it happens. For example, we say that democracy is ruled by people. Ruled by people means indirect election. Sorry, ruled by people means indirectly the people are ruled. Indirectly, in the sense, people elect their representatives, and who are nothing but the MPs. Now, when I say people elect their representatives, let us talk at the national level. They elect the MPs. People only elect directly one type of MP, not all the MPs. And which MPs are directly elected by the people? The Lok Sabha MPs. In fact, you will understand that if you talk of parliament in our country, the parliament has got two houses. You might have a very basic idea. What are the two houses? One is the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. So, therefore, the MPs can be either from Lok Sabha or from the Rajya Sabha, but we are not concerned about Rajya Sabha because these MPs are not elected by the people. But who are elected by the people? The MPs from the Lok Sabha. Okay, so people elect the MPs to the Lok Sabha, and after the elections, from the Lok Sabha, the government is formed. So, from where the government is formed? The government is formed from what is called as the Lok Sabha. Is that clear? It is from the Lok Sabha the government is formed. I will come back to this area a little detail when I discuss the parliamentary democracy. That is the next topic. But the topic of democracy is still not complete. Okay, so we do understand what is democracy ruled by people, but most of the democracies across the world today is what is called as indirect democracy. Indirect democracy means, so ultimately people will elect their representatives. So, these representatives will form the government and they rule the country on behalf of the people. Is that clear? So, this is the idea of what is called as democracy, but the democracy is not complete unless and until, or we cannot say India to be a democracy unless and until there are certain other features in the constitution. Not just India, any country to be considered to be a democracy, they should have these features, and then only they will qualify as what is called as democracy. Now, what is your understanding of democracy? Ruled by people. It can be direct or indirect, but primarily it is indirect today. Indirect means people elect their representatives and from there the government is formed. That means, do you agree with me, one of the essential features of democracy is there should be elections. Without elections, democracy cannot be functional. Do you agree with this? But I would say it is not mere elections. It should be what is called as free and fair elections. So, one of the important feature of democracy in itself is what is called as free and fair elections. So, we will see the other things also. So, first, free and fair elections. Do you agree? So, can anyone tell me what do you understand by free and fair elections? Free election means, to put it in a very simple way, it is free from any form of malpractices. The election should not be having any malpractices. Say for example, the use of money and muscle power, booth capturing, rigging and all those things should not happen, then it's a free election. Now what is a fair election?
Be able to vote, and irrespective of their religion, race, caste, region, they
Most importantly, fair election means that it should give a fair opportunity everybody to contest election. So say let us assume that the elections are happening, but you are not allowing everybody who wanted to contest election to contest election, then that's not a fair election. If only the ruling class is only contesting the election, they come to power again and again, then that's not a fair election in the first place. So therefore, it has to be what is called as free and fair elections. Is that clear? And in order to ensure free and fair elections, we have got what is called as the Election Commission of India. What is the purpose of ECI, Election Commission of India? Primarily, they have to ensure what is called as free and fair elections. Okay. Free and fair elections are ensured, but the elections are happening once in 50 years. Let us assume, what is the cycle of elections in a country? Let us assume, hypothetically, once in 50 years. That means once a person is elected and he, let us assume, become the Prime Minister of India. So they say that only after 50 years the next election. So for the 50 years, I would continue to be the Prime Minister of India. Do you think that that can qualify as democracy? No. Democracy not only requires free and fair elections, but democracy requires periodic elections. That is very must. So the second thing is periodic elections. So free and fair elections, periodic elections. And what is the periodicity of elections in our country? In fact, to the Lok Sabha, let us assume right now to the Lok Sabha, what is the periodicity? The elections has to happen every 5 years. Okay, so free and fair elections, periodic elections are there. But let us assume only 10% of the people are given the right to vote in our country. This happened before India became independent. This happened before India was having its own constitution. When the Britishers ruled India, they also introduced a system of direct election. But though they introduced the system of direct elections, they did not give voting rights to every individual in our country. They selectively gave the voting rights and discriminated in terms of voting rights. Do you know how many people were having the voting rights before India became independent? Only approximately 10% of the people were given the voting rights. Do you know what is the basis on which the voting rights were given? Based on their education, based on their status, that is family background, status, based on their tax paying capacity. So based on all these criteria, only 10% of the people were given the right to vote. But do you think that if only very limited people are given the right to vote, that would reflect the idea of democracy? No, democracy means more participation. Democracy is also about equal rights to everyone. So that means unless and until a country is also having the feature of what is called as universal adult suffrage, then also it does not qualify as what is called as democracy. Universal adult suffrage means universally it is giving the right to vote. To all the people it is giving the right to vote. All eligible people will given the right to vote. Now, do you agree with me that all these features are very, very essential for a particular constitution and to a country to qualify as what is called as a democracy? It does not matter whether it is a direct or an indirect democracy, but again keep it in your mind that most of the democracies in the modern time is only an indirect democracy, because direct democracy is very complex. So what is the population of India today? Does anyone know? It is approximately 140 crores. So it is 1.4 billion is the population of India. It is not possible that 1.4 billion people can be consulted in taking a decision. It becomes so complex. That is why we are having what is called as an indirect democracy. And the democracy will have elected representatives who will form the government and run the country on behalf of the people. But that government, please wait, but that government cannot go for a long time, because for a certain time that is the will of the people, but the will of the people can change over a period of time. the people feels that this government is no longer a good government. So therefore, people should have the right to change the government. That is very essential in a democracy. Therefore, periodic elections is also very important. And does the Constitution of India provides for periodic elections? Yes. Not only periodic elections, whenever the election happens, it should be a free and fair election. And that is why an independent commission is provided in the Constitution, which is the Election Commission of India. Later you will understand, when I discuss about the Election Commission of India, how independent they are. They are independent in the sense even the government cannot control the Election Commission of India. They function independently in order to ensure what is called as free and fair elections. And not only periodic elections and free and fair elections, democracy, the idea will be there only when all the people participate in the elections without any discrimination. Discrimination is against the idea of what is called as democracy. Although there are a few exceptions, later we'll discuss. So therefore, it should also follow the principle of universal adult suffrage. The adult suffrage is very important. It is not the without discrimination. So when all these features are there, then it qualifies what is called as democracy. But India is not merely a democracy. India is what is called as a parliamentary democracy. So therefore, we'll have to also understand as to what is the concept of parliamentary democracy. Yes, what is your query? So that is why I said there is no country in the world today has got what is called as direct elections, because it's very complex. When the idea of democracy started, then also it was not completely direct democracy, but there were more use of tools like what is called as tools of direct democracy. Then also there was an elected government, because directly people cannot decide everything. But that government will not have the ultimate power, but people will have the power by exercising of these tools. Say for example, some of the tools like plebiscite, some of the tools like referendum. Have you ever heard of these words? Let me just briefly explain you, although it is not very important. Suppose let us assume a direct democracy is there. So that direct democracy, the people cannot rule it directly, because I said it is very complex. Even for a small country, it will be very complex. But what they will have is, they will have some tools of direct democracy. Tools means some provisions in their constitution that reflect the idea of direct democracy. One such tool could be referendum, referendum, referendum. Now, what is this referendum? Say for example, if law is to be made in our country, let us assume in India, if law is to be made, who is the law-making authority? The parliament is the law-making authority. And the parliament does not have to seek the approval of the people. Is it clear? Because the people have already elected their representatives, and automatically from the constitution, they'll have the power to make laws. But in a direct democracy, what happens? There will be a law-making body, but that law-making body is not the ultimate authority. They will make a law, or in fact, they will bring in a bill, because law means only if it is approved by the authority, then it becomes a law. They will bring some legislative form, and it is not for the parliament in that particular country to decide, rather they will place it in front of the people. And the people have to vote. And if the majority of the people approve that, then only it can become a law. So although there is a body to do the preliminary work, who is the final authority? The final authority is the people. So such kind of tools are given in a direct democracy. So presently we do not have many countries which is elaborately following all those things because of the complexity. In some of the European countries, I think one of the European country like Switzerland, where they do follow it at a very local level, not at the entire country, at the local level government, they do follow these tools of what is called as direct democracy. When I say the local level of government, say for example a cantonment, say for example a panchayat in India, a similar body in Switzerland, it may not be the same. There they follow certain tools of direct democracy. But at a larger level, they don't follow it, because it becomes very difficult. Clear? So this is what you'll have to understand with regard to the concept of democracy. The second thing that you have to understand is also what is called as parliamentary democracy. So once you understood democracy, naturally you will have to understand the parliamentary democracy. And what is parliamentary democracy? I'll continue in the next class. So before coming tomorrow, you should revise all these things. Okay, so I'll ask question for 5 minutes, then I'll move forward. So you should have an idea of what is constitution. You should have an idea of what is state, what is constitutionalism, what is difference between written and unwritten constitution, and of course you should have an idea of what is democracy. So the remaining features I'll try to complete in the next class, and all these features are very, very essential for you to move forward and to have a proper understanding of the subject. All right. So we'll continue tomorrow. Please revise and come when you come tomorrow. All right. Thank you very much. We'll continue tomorrow.